How do you call out a boomer complaining about kids these days? Didn't you guys have pet rocks in response to an adult having a temper tantrum over fidget spinners? Your generation is soft. It's all the participation trophies you were given. Sure, but who gave us those participation trophies again? Who was that? You know what's really strange about participation trophies? The other parents really push them on you if you don't want to participate. After soccer season last year, I said that we didn't need to get trophies because we didn't win the league. I'm the coach of a U10 girls team. The parents went out and bought the trophies for the kids anyway. I guess the point was lost on them. The kids could not have cared less about the trophies. I think the parents were the ones that wanted them more. Yeah, nah, shut the F up, George. You were doing lines when you were their age. To this day, I still think about that grandma at the grocery store. What a great wife. Context, I was shopping with my girlfriend, we were laughing, and I accidentally bumped the old geezer's cart. He flipped the frick out with a whole rant about how horrible young people are today, and his wife sat him the F down. I'm living in Germany, and there was an old man complaining for no reason to a friend and me, saying something like, "With soldiers like you, there's no war to win." My friend looked him in the eyes and said, "And with soldiers like you, we lost 2 of them." This might be my most favorite comment in the entire world. It's just a bonus that it's Germany. Not to diss most Germans nowadays, y'all are pretty cool. My grandma said something along the lines of, "Young people are so offended these days." So I reminded her that back when she was born, women were being arrested for wearing pants in public. I usually come back with, "Says the generation that has a full-blown temper tantrum every time someone says happy holidays." My father-in-law is 55. Whenever he starts with that, your generation is so offended by everything crap, I just casually remind him that he comes from a time when people would shut stuff down if someone of a darker skin tone drank out of the same water fountain as them. My uncle complaining about kids these days in front of his mother, who's 96 and still has all of her sass. She responded with, "Yeah, because you were just a frickin' ray of sunshine to raise, weren't you?" For the record, the uncle is a butthole completely of his own volition. I don't know how he turned out that way considering the wonderful woman who raised him. I don't know why half of the narrator's sassy grandma characters in this video are coming out with Aussie accents. I guess it's because there's something inherently funny about a vicious old Aussie duck. They're a magnificent species, truly. I work at a bookstore in a smaller, retirement-heavy town. So as you can guess, we get tons of old people in every day, and they all think they're the most important person in the store. One time we had this particularly bad old lady who wanted a book that we didn't have in stock yet. So I tried to explain to her that the book came out in just shy of a couple of months, and if she wanted, then we could pre-order it for her. She was not having any of that. She claimed I was lying and trying to steal her money. So I offered to show her the other books we had by that author, which was met with a stern no and her informing me very loudly that she had read all of the author's other books and that I could find a way to get her that book today, and she wasn't leaving until she had it in her hand. I called a manager to the front who again tried to explain the situation to absolutely no positive result. Eventually, she finally looked at me behind the counter and on the other side of my manager and told me, "My grandkids can order anything they want online and it's there in a couple of days, but my book will take me 2 months to get to my home? You're just trying to punish me for being old." She then demanded my manager send me away and that I've made her very upset. He looked her dead in the eyes and told her that he could send me away, but if she wanted this book to ever get ordered, she might consider being a little nicer to the people whose job it was to get it to her. I have never seen a walker move so quickly out of a store. She was gone in seconds. Me and 2 of my friends were sitting on a bus. It was a Friday afternoon and we were going to a concert, so each of us had a couple of beers in hand. 3 old ladies got on the bus and told us that we should give them our seats. Since half the seats on the bus were empty, we just told them to sit somewhere else. They sat down behind us and started crap-talking really loudly about us and our generation. They said we were lazy drunkards who were good for nothing, all the usual stuff. They were ranting for a good 10 minutes until one of them said something like, "I just hope when they're this old they'll know what being treated like this feels like." At this moment, a 30-something-year-old guy who sat near them stood up and said something like, "God, you know what? I hope I die before 60 so I won't become a bitter old crone like you are." And then he got off the bus. The old hags was speechless. A keynote speaker was basically talking crap about millennials at a corporate function I attended. My boss was like, "Wow, he really hit the nail on the head with your generation." My response was, "We didn't raise ourselves with those standards, you all brought us up this way." It actually made him pause and consider that. A young guy on my team at work. Other people were complaining about millennials in 2018. I pointed out that them not being 38 yet also makes them millennials. I love millennials complaining about millennials, especially when they're all like, I'm not a millennial, I don't do X, Y, or Z. I work for what I have, blah blah blah. Yeah, no generalized millennial does that, and many of them work their butts off hardcore. You guys are so spoiled nowadays. I was looking at an apartment near me and said, these apartments are over $2,000 a month. Well, maybe you should be looking at a studio. This is a studio, with 2 other roommates. The $2,000 is just a third of the rent. Well, good luck. How much did your apartment cost again? Which one? I had several when I was younger. I stared at him for a while. My dad was married, had owned multiple new cars, and had 2 kids and built a brand new house by the time he was 30 years old. I saw his high school report cards, and to be honest, with all the F's and D's, he should have failed. The guy didn't do a lick of work in high school, got terrible grades, but was still rewarded with a job the day after he graduated high school that afforded him all of this on that high school diploma. He's another boomer who thinks every younger generation is lazy. Old people talk a lot of crap about this generation until they suddenly turn off their Wi-Fi and can't remember how to turn it back on, and then I'm suddenly the master of information and resources. This old guy shouting at my brother, kids these days don't know how to save up for college the old-fashioned way, through odd jobs and hard labor. My brother retorted, I am literally mowing your lawn to save up for college. I really have no room to talk. In my day, people thought mullets were cool and girls aquanetted their bangs to the ceiling. Every generation thinks the next ones are the ones who are bat-crap crazy. I was on the train reading a book on my phone. An older lady made the comment that kids these days are always on their phone instead of books. I responded and told her that phones now have the ability to store books, and I told her that I was reading, and then asked her what book she was reading since she was such a bookworm. She had no answer since she didn't have a book. So I said, ugh, baby boomers these days always have their noses in other people's business instead of a book. She called me rude, and I told her to please refrain from speaking to me because I was in the middle of a really good book. Look guys, things were hard for you, things are also hard for modern kids. It's just a different kind of hard. Millennials. Usually every generation has it better than the ones that came before. That's progress. That's as it should be. Millennials are probably the generation more thoroughly screwed over by their predecessors than any other. Massive debt, ruined environment, overpopulation, wealth disparity, and for all that, the generations that are screwing them over call them spoiled and entitled. A great quote I read once went something along the lines of, we knew those participation trophies were bullcrap when you gave them to us, but we accepted them because it seemed important to you. If we had known you'd hold them over our heads someday, we would have told you to shove them up your butts. Suppose the millennials had told their parents to take those participation trophies and shove them. The parents would have said that showed how ungrateful and disrespectful the kids were. If the kids accept the participation trophies, they're bad for having them. This is a no-win situation for the kids. No matter what they do here, people will complain about kids these days. The narrator has had participation trophies successfully hung over his head for a fair chunk of his life, until people like the commenters above pointed out to him that no, he didn't ask for them. I don't remember receiving them with anything other than bemusement and generally lost them pretty quickly afterwards because I just didn't care that I got them. They were a token to make our parents feel better. It annoys me no end that I can't make that comeback retroactively. Just remember that when we were kids, we wore parachute pants, listened to a flock of seagulls, and thought that California raisins were cool. Me responding to someone my age belittling my kids. My coworker said that millennials were lazy and entitled. She's 26. I pointed out that she was a millennial, and she replied saying that I was more of a millennial than her. I'm Gen Z. That's not how that works. That's not how any of this works. My response to whenever parents, teachers, or elders in general say kids these days is adults these days can't teach their kids a thing. As an example, say my parents use a word I've never heard of, I ask them what it meant, they go for the kids these days thing, and I go, yeah, you're right, kids don't know a damn thing these days. They could have known that if their parents taught them. Here are some facts. Violent crime is down compared to when Gen Xers like me were a kid. Teen pregnancy is down. If kids being whiny and disrespectful and addicted to screens is the price we have to pay for that, then yes please, I'll have the whining. It's a lot better than being R-worded or murdered. This generation has no respect, blah blah blah, spoken by a grown man with a useless son. So who raised that generation then? You know, my dad had this thing about respect. Everything he didn't like was apparently disrespectful. You used the last of the hand soap? You didn't like the same music he did? You had the gall not to cook your own scrambled eggs the way he liked? Well, apparently that's disrespectful and we were punished for it. So when I hear someone complain that people don't respect them, I get a little apprehensive. In any case, if you have to demand respect, you probably don't deserve it. Oh, you were complaining about African Americans calling for equal rights when you were their age, Harold. People in nursing homes are so savage, man. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. A few weeks ago, I walked up in line at the express checkout in the grocery store to hear the two seniors in front of me complaining about kids these days. Conversation ranged from how rude they were, to how stupid they were, to how inconsiderate they were, and then the old lady unpacked 14 items out of her cart onto the belt in the 10 items or less lane, while still griping about how young people are inconsiderate. I literally laughed out loud. She looked at me, looked at her items, and then the full context of what she was doing registered. The look on her face was actually amazing. I didn't say anything else. I just smiled at her and she turned her back to me and shut the heck up. I am part of the generation after the millennials. I'm 18, so please let me know if I'm wrong. I feel like every generation has it rough in their own way. Baby boomers were raised by a generation that lived through both world wars and a depression. Millennials were raised during the Great Recession, September 11th, and a couple of other events. What I'm getting at is that this whole "we have it harder than you" rock-throwing contest is just stupid. Meanwhile, my generation has no idea what to do. We have one generation telling us what we do is pointless, and one generation telling us that we're spoiled. I get so angry over this whole generational war. Maybe I don't have a right because I didn't experience it. So here's what I've experienced in my life. 1. Kids are Control-Alt-Deleting on life because they believe that what they think doesn't matter or they're too afraid to get help. 2. We're told that what we do won't matter. Don't deny it, you've seen posts about how people had a plan and then they ended up working somewhere they really didn't want to because they had no choice. 3. We're treated even worse than millennials and boomers because apparently we're just kids. And 4. The hope, if any, that we're given is shut down or apparently false. If we say, "I want to be an artist," a boomer will go, "What kind of job is that? It's not one that's what it was." And the millennial says, "Don't try it. Finding jobs for it is hard and you'll end up in debt." What the frick is the point then? No wonder we all want to Control-Alt-Delete. We don't have a future according to both the generations. Maybe I'm wrong for thinking this, but I'm just one of a few that's decided that ending things would be pointless. I can't leave my brother alone. Sometimes I regret not following that through. Thanks for letting me rant though. And shout out to Gen X for raising my generation but also getting a crappy time of things. My parents are Gen Xers and they had it real bad too. I'm glad some of you believe in my generation, more so than me. I believe we're putting our foot down more, which is a good thing, but I also believe that we need to balance it. I see some of the bad parts of what my generation is bringing, and I hope others will too. A Gen X or 40-year-old-ish woman saw her nephew and niece watching a YouTube video of some gamer and started pointing it out to her friends. She said, "Did you know that kids these days watch videos of other people playing video games?" The Gen Xers all started laughing together. I answered, "And what? You watch sports, don't you?" Well, that's not the same thing. It 100% is though. You buy jerseys so you can pretend to be on a team you don't qualify for, so that you can cheer on teenagers playing a sport that you don't play. Plus, if I don't know I want to buy a $50 game, I don't have to. I can watch a playthrough and see if it's worth it. Oh, that's not why they do it. So what? At least if I buy a game I can play it nearly as good as the people that I watch. If I got you a football, could you kick a 40-yard field goal? Most of the time when I hear kids these days, I say, "Kids are supposed to be stupid. What's your excuse?" When mine complain, I just turn off the life support. Well, that's a much more extreme form of comeback than most of the ones we're seeing here, and however much your parents get on your back, I don't feel we can quite condone that on the channel here. When my fellow boomers go off on it, I normally just roll my eyes and say, "Yeah, because we were so much better." Personally, I like the way that these millennials are becoming activists. It shows they care. The students at the school my husband works at organized a peaceful firearm reform demonstration. When I was in high school, we could hardly organize a sleepover, and I literally never ever read or watched the news. It blew my mind when I got to college and had to figure out who to vote for. From some dark part of the webinet long ago, someone who was probably in the baby boomer generation was complaining about how kids get participation trophies for everything. Someone replied, "So who gave us the participation trophies? We didn't ask for them." Market cause scary workable cake sand divide bells file license? Thanks for writing in. I think people who care about kids of today this much have got something wrong with them. Except kids falling off bikes. Frick, I could watch kids falling off bikes all day. I don't give a crap about your kids. I've heard people call millennials weak. I find that funny because it kind of seems to me like millennials are capable of changing with the times and keeping up with progress, while older generations refuse progress and shun anyone who has it. Just because we don't have to walk in the snow 10 miles to school doesn't mean we'd be incapable of that. Plus, why the hell do they talk about things like that longingly? I thought millennials could change with the times, and for the most part they can, but after seeing Reddit's reaction to Fortnite and its fan base in the year of 2019, I'd have to disagree. Be nice, those kids will be wiping your butt one day. Some lady at the library was complaining about how children are using iPads too young and how they shouldn't be using technology at all because it's bad for them. I told her that the kids that are using iPads at the age of 3 are going to be the same adults who invent the most amazing technology that'll change the world someday. And then I offered her help to send an email because she's apparently too old to know how. Yeah, I disagree with you though. It just works style computing has only made people more allergic to technology. How many people today know how to use the command prompt? That used to be literally everybody. Hey, shut up, is my go-to response. It's simple, elegant, and timeless. I just say, the one I raised is great. How did you do with yours? I was at a punk concert, swinging udders, and one of my friends, being a first-generation punk like myself, says, "These young punks don't have no respect." I replied, "No respect? It's freaking punk rock, man." Everyone started laughing and we enjoyed the gig. I overheard this guy complaining about how kids these days think gay marriage should be allowed, and a person responded, "At least we weren't racist and sexist." I live in a small town and any minor crime makes for amazing debates on the local Facebook page. At one point, some kid threatened another with a knife and the whole place went mental with, "The world is going downhill" and "What is it with kids these days?" So I did something that I'd been wanting to do for a while. I started a thread on there detailing how my granddad had been threatened by an actual gang of lads with Stanley knives and even straight razors, which should have been a clue, giving details of exactly where it happened, but crucially leaving out the date. After the usual outcry of, "Kids these days," I explained the truth. It was all true, but happened in the late 1940s, and the gang in question were teddy boys from a nearby city. My granddad died before I was born, and the pub it happened outside was demolished 25 years ago. I pointed out that this was nothing new, it's always happened, and if anything, crime in the area is down on what it used to be. If anything, kids are becoming more moral and law-abiding. A huge amount of people agreed too, and there was an entertaining discussion about all sorts of crimes and events from the past several decades that have taken place in our little town. Those who criticize this generation forget who raised it. You know the old days when people started wars and killed thousands of people? The old days when showing skin was weird? The old days when we started 2 wars that led to trillions of dollars of debt? Those old days when we had separate but equal? And when Christianity was dominant in school and government? Insert your complaint here. Yeah, those were the days. Older Gen Xer here, please don't blame us, we're not our parents. Also, a lot of us are computer and tech literate. Some of us are industry experts. We work with millennials. My kids are 30 and 34. I sure don't give them a hard time. I'm not my parents. Stop lumping us in because we're grey-haired. Please. If I had the courage, I'd probably say, you know, I bet your parents said the same thing about your generation, and their parents said the same thing about theirs. I heard a lady say, "Oh my god, the Fortnite dance is so stupid." Her husband piped in, "Shut up, Martha, I still have that video of you doing the Macarena." There was then silence for an extended period of time. This was all overheard by me at a local coffee shop. Well, the one thing that both of those cringy dances of their generations have in common is that they'll never equal the glory of the Charleston, a dance so cool that I'm positive the kids are still doing it at the discotheques of today. While I'm older, each generation develops their own rivalry with the preceding and upcoming generation. Never trust anyone over 30 was such a common mantra at one time that it worked its way into many sci-fis in the 60s and 70s. Truth is, every generation feels the last generation screwed them by not giving them a pristine world, and the older generation is annoyed that they're not given credit for the things that they've done to make it better. The world was messed up when we got it, we try to make it better where we could, and it'll still be messed up when you get it. And you'll try to fix it in little ways and pass a messed up world to the generation after. Just keep moving forward. There are less wars today than any before, there's less global poverty, and people live longer and healthier. That's nothing to scoff at least. Funnily enough, it was on Facebook. A post about millennials taking basic classes like cooking, sewing, and laundry. The post was something like, "Oh my god, millennials, how useless and ridiculous." The response was that the current generation was so proactive that they seek out the skills the previous generation failed to teach them. Hot damn. All I'm going to add is that I'm a Gen Xer and I'm so glad I grew up when I did. Kids these days face a ton of pressure from every direction. Being a kid or younger person today looks exhausting. What's the most cringeworthy way someone has tried to show you they were quirky? I had a coworker in a retail environment who was always going on to us about how special he was and how he saw the world differently than the rest of us slobs because he was a writer. Customer with lazy eye comes up to the register. Coworker to customer, "Hey, I see you've got a lazy eye. I notice things like that because I'm a writer." Super awkward checkout ensued. "I notice things like that because I'm a writer." I couldn't help but read that in Ralph Wiggum's voice. My uncles are both published writers. One of them is the most humble guy you could ever meet. The other is so fricking egotistical. I mean, he's clever and very smart, but he makes everything about himself. He can't stand to be wrong. He practically had a fit when my 15-year-old brother beat him in a pull-up contest, and he's like in his late 50s. He doesn't wear glasses despite really needing them because he doesn't want to look old. Regularly almost crashes and puts his children at real risk because of his vanity. I knew a girl in high school who used to diagnose herself with mental illness based on, to the best of my knowledge, Year 11 psychology class and online quizzes. She would also try to one-up anyone who had a legitimate, medically diagnosed mental illness, despite having, in her words, major depression, anxiety, OCD, bulimia, Munchausen's, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and antisocial personality disorder. She refused point-blank to ever see a doctor and have any one of these diagnoses confirmed or treated. If you're gonna fake mental illness, you might as well do something unique like Morgellons, narcolepsy, Alice in Wonderland syndrome, or if you were really committed, trichotillomania. Lame. I knew a girl who fakes sneezes when she walks outside. She found out only 25% of people sneeze when they see bright sunlight, so she wanted to be part of a minority. I have no idea why she does this, but her fake sneeze is this loud, rough, manly-sounding thing. It's comical how different it is to her real sneeze. Wait, sun sneezes are a minority? I had no idea. It's a genetic quirk. I didn't realize it was weird growing up because my entire family did it, except my mom. I was confused when I found out other kids don't have to sneeze when it was sunny outside. We had a girl that would have an uncontrollably loud hiccup at the most inappropriate times. Moment of silence during the Memorial Day thing, concerts, you name it. Anytime there was silence, she just had to get everyone to look at her. My hiccups end with a burp and I hate them. A subteacher in 3rd grade really ripped on me for them. I mean, this just sounds like the oral version of what my butt seems to want to do at the most inopportune and public moments, so the inappropriate hiccups has my sympathy. A guy I went to high school with was convinced he was a vampire, and once he actually bit my friend during class because he couldn't help himself. A person bit me once, at a party. It was unexpected. I just reflexively hit her in the face while her teeth were still on me. Maybe I tried to push her off me, maybe I tried to hit her so she let go. I'm honestly not sure, but I do know I didn't think about it first. She got a bloody nose. I had bite marks on my shoulder. She said, "What the frick?" I said, "What the frick to you? What are you doing?" She said, "You frickin' hit me. What's the matter with you?" I said, "Me? You fricking bit me. The frick is the matter with you?" She said it was cute when she does stuff like that and that I was some kind of woman-hitting psycho. I was asked to leave the party and most definitely did. 15 years later, still one of the strangest experiences of my life. She brought a fricking ukulele everywhere. At first you'd think, wow, a cute girl with a ukulele, I bet she's really cool, but you'd be falling into her trap. She barely knew 2 chords and was a complete moron. I knew a lady like this where in high school people would be like, "Sweet, can you play me a song?" causing her to snap, "No," at them and have people just be confused. I had a hipster neighbor who would strum his ukulele and smoke his pipe outside while his kids rode bikes. Oh, that's so wholesome. Just a dude chilling while looking out for his kids. This girl I know constantly talks up how much she loves nerdy things like no other girl is into. Nerdy things like Game of Thrones, Star Wars, and Lord of the Rings. Yep, very unpopular entertainment no other girl is into. Her name was Trinity. She said she had multiple personalities, 3 to be exact. She was lying. I asked her parents, they had no clue what I was talking about. He'd wear a paper Krispy Kreme sailor hat every day. I saw bullies rip his hat to shreds and he'd just reach into his roller backpack and pull out another one. Never saw him without it. What a frickin' power move, though. The fact that he pulled one out of his backpack is big wang energy. The fact that his backpack rolled is even bigger wang energy. Friend of mine went through a super proud to be Italian phase about the time Sopranos aired. He refused to eat his mum's cooking one night because it was too Irish. There were many other things he'd do to try and convey a mob connection. He was part Irish and eventually became a cop. What kind of Italian refuses his mama's cooking? What kind of Italian survives refusing his mama's cooking? A non-Italian. This one guy would put blue Powerade in a Windex bottle and spend the day taking it out of his backpack and squirting it in his mouth. High school. There were plenty of other things, but this one stands out. Isn't that a scene from Scrubs? I kind of remember the janitor doing that to freak out JD in one episode. Had a class with a guy that wanted people to think he was a nerd. I guess to him, nerds wear large glasses. Only problem was he didn't need glasses. He started showing up to class wearing 3D glasses from the movie theater with the lenses popped out. My first thought was, why would someone wear cardstock paper glasses with the red and blue cellophane ripped out? It took me reading your comment to realize or remember that's not what they give out anymore. This guy in my high school would wear cat ears and carry a stuffed bunny around. I think he was trying to look like an anime character or something. Anyway, the most cringeworthy part, he would constantly meow in class. Not like meow, but more like yeah, like an anime cat or whatever. My oldest kid is on the spectrum, and I've had to monitor and restrict his interest in anime because when he watched too much of it, he would start having inappropriate and stylized reactions that were super off-putting. Like in anime, apparently when a girl they like approaches, they sometimes do a freeze frame type of the character freaking out that has their arms and legs all stretched out in midair, making a horrible noise. Now, picture a 13-year-old leaping up and hollering in Dollarama because a pretty girl came into the aisle. Sorry, kiddo, humans don't actually do that, you're cut off again. You should let him binge Arrested Development and see what he comes up with. Yes, let him learn from Tobias, Buster, and George Michael Maharis how to behave around women. Look, if I can watch a real kid who is any one of those 3 characters from Arrested Development, my life will be that bit better. And it can't be that different to my friends and I just constantly quoting it to each other all the time. Advise an anime club in my high school and I fricking hate these kids. I got a call from the front office one day. I was told to get my butt down there and stop whatever was going on in front of the office. I run over there and see one of the girls, ears and tail on, is crawling around on the ground rubbing on people's legs. I told her to get up and she hissed at me. I literally had to write her up for hissing at me. Same group made up their own Naruto village. Many asked what I did to deserve this. When it began 11 years ago, it was a group of kids who needed a place to be. They had a hard time making friends and getting a hold of anime was hard. I started it to give them a place to belong and hopefully teach them about the line between fan and obnoxious. Hundreds of kids have passed through it and had a better time in high school for it. Then there are those who don't want friendship, they just want attention, at any price. I love how this happened and the solution was, I don't know, call whoever advises the anime club, they'll know what to do. Damn it, we've got cat girls in the lobby, call the weeb wrangler. Imagine birthing a kid and raising it for 15 years for it to amount to that. Teenagers are inherently dumb and weird. What's worse is that there was a guy that came into the nightclub I worked in with a trench coat, cat ear headband, tail, and cat eye or red contact lenses. At 25 plus years old, it's time to outgrow that phrase. I'm all for self-expression, but there's a line between it and ostracizing yourself from society. The receptionist at the sign-in desk I do my clinical for school at is normal while back at work, but once she gets home, she literally changes into her goth style. I mean the super pale foundation, black lipstick, crazy eyeliner and eyebrows, piercings, she still wears trip pants occasionally, crazy tutus, black fingerless gloves, and she has a freaking pet crow named Malice and 3 black cats. She's into witch or Wiccan crystals, and she believes that they have healing powers, if that makes sense. And she takes her acceptable for work wig off and rocks a purple faux hawk, her actual hair. I didn't believe her until she showed me pictures. I thought she was hazing me because I was the new kid. I was bewildered. That's how you be your weird self without shame and without letting it ruin your social or professional life. The kind of people who proudly say they are a butthole. It annoys me so much. A girl I used to hang out occasionally liked to pretend she was some kind of bad biker B-word. She talked about riding every chance she got. She showed people pictures and dressed the part. I'd always hit her up when I was going riding to see if she wanted to come along. It gets old being the only woman around. She'd always have an excuse and claimed not to ride if it had rained that week and so on and so forth. Would always give me heck about getting a real bike. I ride a CRB 1000RR and she had an 883 Sportster. She was once complaining to me that she only got her baby out 3 times that year. Which, you base your entire identity on something you do 3 times a year? Ah, gotcha, one of those Harley people. There's 2 types of Harley owners. The ones that are like, hell yeah, motorcycles, and the ones that are like, Harleys are the only motorcycle. Saw this kid in a class who would always try to walk like Captain Jack Sparrow. Anybody who wears those fricking normal people scare me shirts. Jeez. Normal people scare me, people scare me. About 10 years ago, around 2009 or 2010 or so, I'm into some pretty underground obscure music. Oh really? That's cool. What kind of bands? Korn, Avenged, Sevenfold, Metallica. What? I'm convinced some teenagers go out of their way to feel persecuted so they can find an identity to call their own. Because good gosh, that's almost as funny as the one girl who seriously, unironically claimed that the Offspring and Green Day red jumpsuit apparatus were hardcore punk. More so annoying than cringeworthy, but people who pretend to have a mental illness because they think it makes them unique. Ah, those Funko Pops and not being perfectly lined up triggers my OCD so hard. Nope, you like things to be orderly, totally normal. Having to check the light switch 20 times to the level that you end up being late for things, that's more what OCD is. Yeah, I never really knew what OCD was really until someone told me about it. He said he always has to hit the ground twice when he picks up something he dropped, and pick up a pen 3 times on crap. Sucks. Oh crap, probably everything I did in high school. I've just repressed the whole 4 years. Same. I embarrassingly strove to be a manic pixie dream girl. Ugh. If you can't look back on the things you did when you were younger and cringe, then you haven't matured. Had a girl in my high school who legitimately believed she was an anime girl and was just born in the wrong body. She would listen to these subliminal "become an anime girl" YouTube videos, end everyone's name in san, wore a schoolgirl outfit every day, I went to a public school, and would sometimes say random Japanese words or phrases because her brain wasn't fully accumulated to America. Needless to say, she was a fully white girl from the Midwest. I love these because the people who act like this have absolutely no idea how Japan really is. Anyone else noticing the overrepresentation of anime kids in this topic? Apparently it's a way of making yourself very memorable, to say the least. Actually, all the ones I knew in school were fine. I thought I was hot stuff because I didn't like reading. I kinda regret that now. My daughter, a bright, wonderful, hilarious mum of 2 and wife, has the best friend that goes around bragging to people how she never reads anything more challenging than a copy of US Magazine. She finds it the hairdresser. The friend is 42, and frankly, we're less than thrilled they've been friends for 20+ years. Before I get judgy comments, there is a ton of other crap I'm leaving out. She's any parent's basic definition of a bad influence. The no reading thing would be 50% easier to swallow if the friend didn't insist on injecting her opinion on a wide variety of world affairs, politics, entertainment, etc. To paint a picture, I'm 100% not making this up. Her life's ambition is to become a for-real, real housewife. She'll marry anyone and move anywhere to get on reality TV. She actually went to Miami from Northern California on vacation to specifically go to a club that was depicted in the Real Wives of Miami Beach episode just to go to that club, and was turned away at the door, and had the unmitigated gall to do the "Do you know who I am?" at the doorman. I'm acquainted with someone who will pack her cat in a carrier, drive to the local university, no small feat considering the parking situation and 40,000 students, and push the cat around the quad in an antique baby carriage. All the while she'll make exasperated social media posts about how rude people are to stare at her or talk to her. As far as I know, she doesn't walk the cat around her own quiet residential area. A little unrelated, but there was this old guy that would walk his dog around on campus last year. Big loping golden retriever that was so friendly and sweet. The dog's owner was also really kind. I got to talking to him one day, and he revealed he likes walking on campus because the kids there tend to miss their own dogs back at home, and he likes causing a little happiness in his daily routine. Switched schools this year, so I haven't seen them. I miss you, Bella. People that repost those cringy, "I'm not a B-word, I'm just honest, wink," posts multiple times a day to Facebook while reaffirming the post in the text comment above, saying how much the post is, "Yep, oh, it's so me." Cringe. My eyes change color in the sunlight. Also, my eyes change color with the seasons. Wow, who knew different types of lighting based on the weather could affect what color things are seen as? I hate to be mean, but there was this girl in a couple of my classes in college who told the professors that she wanted to be called Oracle instead of her real name. You could see the cringe in the professor's eyes and feel the awkward tension all over. About once every quarter, this happens to me. I'm not like everybody else. Followed directly by being exactly like everyone else. It's 2005 Hot Topic all over again. I adopted an RP accent in high school. I already had a bit of a posh voice from going to elocution lessons, but I went full 19th century British aristocrat sometimes. I went to school in regional Australia too. Also, I bought a pocket watch to look posh. I do actually like pocket watches, but I knew why I did it. Girls who say they only hang out with boys because it's less drama. Read, "No one puts up with my crap anymore and I don't play well with others." The scene. German class. The teacher was someone who escaped the DDR, East Germany, when she was young. The actor, an obese guy with a neckbeard, skinny jeans, and pink shoes who said, "Oh, you're from East Germany? I'm a communist too." I'm so glad he dropped the class. The dysfunctional veteran gear. I hate that crap so much, typically worn by a guy that maybe got through basic before they were separated or kicked out for underage drinking. I'll see guys in my classes wearing it, always talking about crap that has nothing to do with the class I'm taking. Meanwhile, I'm just thinking, I get it, dude, now shut the frick up and let the professor get back to the lesson plan. I know someone that is a habitual funeral goer. Anytime someone remotely affiliated with them passes, especially in the town we live in, they are all over social media proclaiming how devastated they are and how close they were to the person. More annoying is repeating the same story over and over about their one interaction with them, or whatever. Like tries to get super close with the family at the time and then trails off after the hype from the death is over. People who wear "cute but psycho" shirts. At least it's one way to know who to avoid, I guess. I was talking to a classmate on the bus and she hauled out her sketchbook to show me her original character, which was a bear that vomits corpses. She related all of this to me in a very loud and carrying voice. Tim, who in 2007 dressed like he was hosting a Nickelodeon game show in 1994, was always around. He thought it was shtick, but he would flip your words around on you. "The Yankees are your team, huh? What do you own the Yankees?" Did not stop. Finally, someone asked if he was 7 years old and knew how to talk like an adult. Tim then disappeared faster than Drax at the end of Infinity War. 12 years, and I haven't seen him since. Bumper stickers. Lots and lots of bumper stickers. If I see more than 2 to 3 on a car, like, okay, you support a political candidate and love your Doberman, cool, I just assume the person driving it is insufferable. If they're that insistent on sharing their opinions in public to strangers, imagine how they are privately. I once saw a car with so many bumper stickers it covered the entire trunk and back window. Not sure how that's not illegal, but either way, I was embarrassed for them. I went to college with a girl whose car, front, hood, sides, roof, and back were all bumper stickers. There were so many you almost couldn't tell the car was silver. There were like 13 different versions of this coexist sticker, then a ton for Planned Parenthood, lots of anti-Trump stuff, lots of Black Lives Matter stickers, Pride stickers, etc. Which, hey, cool if you support or don't support stuff. But fricking hell, she was the worst. Just at everything. She was insufferable. If you didn't agree with every single thing she did or said, it was a personal attack on her, and she had to tell everyone you were a right-wing extremist, or a stalker, or a misogynist, etc. She mooched homework answers from everyone, and if you wouldn't help her, suddenly you victimized her somehow. She couldn't hold a single conversation without making it political or announcing she was a vegan, or she hated X, Y, or Z. She was the most annoying person I've ever met. Sometimes I see that car in town and I just cringe. I knew a girl who wanted to be a manic pixie dream girl type. After some exposure to her, I realized that meant she was flaky, had erratic behavior, and displayed some traits that implied she was mentally ill. I'm so happy she's out of my life. When people say they only listen to The Greatest Showman, or that the only type of music they like is The Greatest Showman. 1, that's not something to brag about, and 2, that doesn't make you special. A lot of people like that movie. Everyone who has now started using "one life to live" or this, #OL2L, as their new YOLO life motto. Divorced your husband? OL2L. Fricked the hot Brazilian dude at work who's engaged? OL2L. Going to take a crap? OL2L. Put a pic of the coffee you're drinking in a very hipster area on Instagram? #OL2L. Don't use a hashtag or weird life motto to be a different kind of butthole. You'll always be a butthole. My ex was a one-upper and always had to play the devil's advocate or bring attention to himself. He was a self-proclaimed anarchist. He carried several knives on him and only drank coffee. Claimed smoking helped his ADHD. Invalidated everything I said when I just needed to vent about something. Always making fun of people, rudely in public, and yelled at me for being embarrassed. Refused to get a job because he didn't want to work for the man. Was absolutely convinced the FBI would break into our house and haul us off to camps. What he won't tell you, I worked in a crappy retail job to pay for our rent. I did the grocery shopping and cooking, he used food stamps, and he used all of his school money on bug-out bag gear. Oh, and the real reason he didn't drive was because his license was suspended, not because he didn't want to drive. 24-year-old me was a fricking idiot. What's the worst experience you've had with a toilet? Not me, but a friend of mine. A group of us all decided to go on a camping trip with our respective significant others. His girlfriend tells him she will not go unless they have a toilet, so he goes out and buys a portable, chemical toilet. He also buys a new tent for them to use and retire the old tent to be the bathroom. He sets the toilet up in town on the valley floor, fills up the fill tank with the blue chemical fluid. He tests it to make sure it works properly. The operation is simple. You pull a lever which opens a flap in the bottom of the toilet. The evidence is dropped through the flap, and a second valve drops fluid down the sides of the toilet into the open flap, flushing all remaining evidence into the lower tank. The flap then returns to its original position, creating a nice, airtight seal, preventing the contents of lower tank from disturbing your precious sensibilities. We drove all the way up to the top of the mountain and set up camp. We have a fun day of eating camp food, drinking beer, and having fun. It's now probably close to midnight and pitch black. My friend is the first one to need to use the new bathroom with the new 20th century chemical toilet. He excuses himself and proceeds to thoroughly test the storage capacity of the upper bowl. He pushes the lever to open the flap to the lower sealed tank, and immediately he gets a lesson on air pressure displacement, as the 7,000 or so feet higher elevation has resulted in a much higher pressure inside the waste tank than the air outside. There also appears to be a slurry of liquid and solid waste between escaping air and victim. What we hear around the campfire is a loud thwomp, followed by the friends screaming, "Oh God! Oh God! Oh crap! No!" Of course, being the good friends we are, we rush to his aid with him yelling, "Don't come in here! Don't come in here!" Many wet naps were used that night, a midnight creek river bath, and years of teasing came from that night. That was the last camping trip for that tent. It was retired. The toilet, however, still is used, but the reason for the little screw valve on the side was learned by all. In conclusion, pressure difference in camping toilet became crap fountain. I wonder if, on deliberation, his partner would have just preferred crapping in the woods like the other campers do. I've never used one of these devices, and now I'm not sure I ever would. Was at Target one day, shopping for groceries and whatnot. I then got that feeling, you know, when you've got to take a dump. I rushed to the nearest bathroom and unleashed the beast. Mind you, this Target only had one bathroom, and it was a bathroom where only one person could be there at a time. I thought it would be a quick crap, but it turned out I was wrong, and it would not stop coming out. This goes on for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then I hear knocking on the door. It was a lady that said, "My son really has to use the bathroom. Would you please hurry up?" I couldn't really respond to her because of all the pain I was feeling, so I basically moaned and grunted at her. After about 3 minutes, I hear a kid screaming, "Mommy!" and I could probably tell it was the mother's son. Hearing this, I knew I needed to hurry up, so I forced myself to squeeze out the extremities faster. As soon as it's done, I whip fast as possible. The worst part is that when I tried to flush the toilet, it clogged. so about 3/4 of the toilet bowl is filled with crap, pee, and toilet paper. Scared, I wash my hands and make a run for the door, then to my car. When I exit the bathroom, I notice a little boy crying and his mum saying things like, "Frick, damn, crap," etc. Turns out the kid crapped himself because I was taking such a long time. It was awkward when I was walking back to my car since the woman's car was right next to mine and she was carrying him to the car so the kid could go home and change. In conclusion, made a kid crap himself after taking a humongous crap myself. Here you go, my worst toilet experience. I have issues. I'm painfully shy, very nervous of things a lot of the time, and I get highly anxious about some things, particularly going to the loo. I find it really awkward to go to the bathroom in an unfamiliar house, even more so with unfamiliar people. When I was at university, I was the only girl living in a house with a group of boys. I was quite nervous about crapping. I mean, males tend to have a kind of idea of females that they don't do crap or something, and that they think that when they do, it's pink and pebble-like. Anyhow, one evening I went to the toilet, didn't put the light on, and the pull cord for the light was outside the bathroom. So I made the decision on my way that I wouldn't use the light. It was early evening in autumn, so it was light-ish. I could see, but it was dim and shadowy. I only had to pee, so it wasn't a huge problem. Only, it was a problem because then I ended up pooing. I was supposed to be going food shopping with one of my housemates, and here I was, pooing. I was getting a little anxious that he was waiting downstairs, and the time I was taking would be a firm indicator that I was more than peeing. I quickly finished up and was about to leave the bathroom when I thought to myself that I should maybe double-check the toilet was clean before I left. Having no light meant it was very hard to see if there were any stains. I used my phone to light up the toilet and saw the biggest poo ever. Seriously, it was taking up half the toilet and was wedged into the U-bend. I panicked. I flushed, but it didn't move. Didn't budge. Now I was getting really flustered. Downstairs, housemates would have definitely heard a double flush. It still hadn't gone. I couldn't risk a third flush. A third flush would be far more humiliating than dealing with it using an alternate method. At least I thought so. Not sure how I convinced myself of that, but in blind panic and toilet embarrassment, I did. I convinced myself that I had no other option but to lift it out. I did not tell myself to wrap my hand in toilet paper. In went the hand. I got a firm grip on the log and Sue learned that there is no gripping a poo. It can't be done. It began to disintegrate in my hand. But I managed to sort of flip it into the sink where it landed in 2 chunks with a wet thud slap and left opaque brown stains all over the sink. Here I will add that I definitely should have just broken it up and flushed it, but I was panicking so bad. I could feel my heart pumping and I was sweating and my breathing was stalling. My whole body was shaking and felt like jelly. It was like a negative adrenaline. So what do you do when you have a sink covered in crap stains and 2 huge chunks of crap sat there waiting to be disposed of? You mash it down the sink. You run the tap until the water is scalding hot and you proceed to mash the poo into the plug hole as it disintegrates. Only it blocks the plug hole. Now the sink is filling up, and you have a crap plug in the bottom of the sink of burning water, and you have to unblock it. So you shove your hand in, burning yourself while you're trying like crazy to scoop the crap out of the little plug holes. All the while, you hear your housemate shouting up the stairs, "Hey, Susie, are you okay? Are you ready to go?" Oh crap, literally. Suddenly, the panic reaches a new level. The housemate is coming up the stairs, the door to your crap sauna is at the top of those very stairs, and you know that the steam in this room is the most foul-smelling steam that could ever be, and soon it will have leaked under the door to the top of the stairs he's walking up. You grab bleach, soap, shampoo, shower gel, and start squirting it under the hot tap, trying like hell to make normal-smelling steam. I'm in the shower. I thought I'd need a shower. It might save time. What the frick was that excuse? Anyhow, the steam is now pooey and perfumed and sickening. The poo is almost mashed away, but the last few bits are not leaving. If you've never manhandled crap, it has a texture like no other. It feels a bit like when you start kneading bread just after adding the warm water and it's warm and sticky. Maybe it's seeded bread. There's definitely a slight coarseness to crap. Mainly, it's the stickiness that is a hassle. And the smell. Obviously, it sticks like melted chocolate and dough combined into a sticky, thick nightmare. You force the last few nuggets down the sink and start trying to wash your hands. The smell will not leave. Will not budge. After 10 minutes of scrubbing and soaping and crying and sitting because your legs will no longer support you, you decide to do the walk of shame. Exit the bathroom, tell your housemate that you were sick in the shower and it took some cleaning up. Remember suddenly, thanks to Beethoven, that tomato juice gets rid of skunk smell and wonder if it will get rid of poo smell. Set off to the supermarket in new hope of getting rid of the smell. The biggest "oh crap" came in the toilet roll aisle when my housemate says, "Oh, this reminds me, I did the biggest crap ever earlier. It wouldn't flush, I just had to leave it." It wasn't even my own crap. I'd known this guy for 3 weeks and had already gotten up to my elbows in his crap, all because it felt weird pooing in an unfamiliar environment. That flatmate's gonna try and take a dump at least 3 times before he leaves the house from now on. Yep, this incident will scar her for life. He will constantly go to the bathroom before he does anything, really. Holy crap, I must have been that kid. I thought this would be a funny topic to do, and it very much is. However, it's also making me pause to gag intermittently, so a mixed bag in summary. A mixed bag of poo, pee, and my spew. Here's another one. I was pooping in a train toilet. I thought it was locked. My country's train toilets use electronical locks. You push a button and it's supposed to be locked. But it wasn't. Some young good-looking lady walked right in. I was confused and didn't know what to say. 1, because I was crapping, and 2, because she was a fine-looking woman. So what came from my mouth joyfully was, "Tickets, please!" And then the door closed automatically. I have Hirschsprung's disease, which basically means I was born without the muscles that move poop through the intestines. Basically, when I have to poop, there's no holding it in for a while. I have maybe 5 minutes before I crap myself. So I have many, many poop stories. My favorite happened when I was about 10. I went over to a friend's house, whose mother was a teacher at the school we went to, for the night. Since she's a girl and I'm a boy, we couldn't sleep in the same room, so I had to sleep in her older brother's room, who was about 16. Right before it was time for bed, my friend's mum said not to use the bathroom in the brother's room. I definitely didn't hear this, probably because we were playing Legos or something. Anyway, about 2 a.m. I feel the need and rush to the closest bathroom, her brother's bathroom. I left the beefiest, runny crap I have ever crapped in that poor, poor toilet. There's 3 funny parts to this story. First, there was no water in the bowl. Crap, there was no water in the whole bathroom. Second, everyone knew not to use that bathroom, the door was always shut, so the smell slipped under the nasal radar for like 3 days and the contents of the bowl hardened into poop steel. Lastly, her mum asked me at school if I knew anything about them needing to replace a certain toilet in a certain forbidden bathroom. That's amazing. I worked in a display suite for new apartments. The toilets were always dry. One Saturday morning, we opened up the display to the most foul stench I've ever smelled. It was the middle of summer, and the display suite was all glass with a tin roof so it heated up like a sauna. Trying to find the source of the smell, we realized that someone had crapped in the display toilet last weekend, despite there being no toilet paper or water in the toilet, and being too embarrassed or inconsiderate to tell anybody. So for a week in the middle of Australian summer, this turd sat there festering. It was rancid. The worst part was, because it was in a working environment, it was a biohazard. The company I worked for was too cheap to professionally deal with the issue, so the cleaners tried to vacuum it out, blowing hot poo air out the back of the vacuum, only making the smell worse. It took weeks to get out, and now we seal the toilets shut. Typically, I won't drop a deuce anywhere but my own house, but one time I was at my new girlfriend's house and the situation was dire. I was getting sweaty fighting it. My stomach was making the sound that there were radioactive gases brewing, and I knew I didn't have time to get all the way home. So instead, thinking that I have the bowels of a normal person, I went to the bathroom and destroyed that toilet. Even with the fan on, I'm positive she heard it as if I recorded it for her on my phone. Finally, it was over. I flush and it clogs. I spent a total of 45 minutes in there between the act and the post-war toilet maintenance, and lost any smooth points I had with her for the next several months. In conclusion, pooped in my girlfriend's house and went from knight in shining armor to the poopsmith in 45 minutes. So, what happened with you guys? I reckon it all went down the toilet from there. One time when I was little, I wanted to know what it would be like to be blind, so I blindfolded myself. When it was time to pee, I couldn't see the toilet and accidentally peed on the lid and started crying. Not sure if it was my worst or my best. I was peeing when a big sneeze hit me, which made me fart, which for some reason was followed immediately by a burp, which made me snort in laughter, which gave me the hiccups. You deserve an award for that. Is that what number 3 is? Burp snort. I once farted at the exact same time someone texted me. My phone was in my front pocket and set to vibrate. For a split second, I thought I'd farted so hard it was coming out front and back. I was walking into a stall in a subway, as in the underground transportation system, when I slipped in a puddle of pee and stuck my right arm into a pile of unflushed crap in the toilet in front of me, soaking my knees in pee, covering my hand above the wrist in the worst case of the runs I've ever seen, and badly spraining a couple of fingers when they caught on the edge of the toilet when I was catching myself. Then I spewed. I was at my girlfriend's house for the second time and things were still rather tense. I got a terrible stomachache during dinner and had to use the bathroom immediately. The layout of their house was in a way that the bathroom was next to the dining room. Not wanting to make much embarrassing noise, I wisely created a nest of toilet paper on the ground to later transfer the poo into the toilet. Squatting down, I began crapping, lost my balance, fell, hit my head on the counter, and fell unconscious. I was found in a mess of crap when I came to. I feel like this is an unfinished story. What happened when you came to? Not only will this technique prevent splashback, but it will muffle the sound. For our viewers' convenience, the narrator has followed the link provided by that previous commenter. The technique is apparently laying a single piece of toilet paper on the surface of the water, which does wonders for preventing splash and, by extension, UTIs. Academic hall bathroom, senior year of college. Went to take a crap during class. Did not look at the roll beforehand. Go to wipe, no paper. By myself in the bathroom, so I do that sort of haven't wiped my butt crab walk to check out the other stall. No toilet paper in there either. Go to the paper towel dispenser. No paper. Ended up using a handful of gum wrappers I had in my pocket to get enough to walk downstairs to the other bathroom and finish the job. I still have nightmares. Okay, so when I was in the first grade, I went to this hardcore Christian school in Florida, USA. So one day, my class went on a field trip to the library or something along those lines. I just remember them leaving the classroom for about half an hour or so. Anyway, I wasn't allowed to come because the week before I had tied my shoes together in the library, so I got kicked out. So here I am, first grader, alone in the classroom when I feel grumbly in my tumbly. I figure that I have to wait until my teacher gets back before I'm allowed to go to the bathroom, so I patiently wait as the poop pains get more and more intense. Eventually, I am in the corner curled into a ball squeezing my butt cheeks with the force of 1,000 gods. I hear my teacher from down the hall and as I jump into the air with relief, I crap myself. I straight up crap myself as my entire class enters the classroom. So then, first grader me tries to play it off like nothing's going on, and I sit in my seat and proceed to learn. I'm an idiot. I'd frickin' crapped myself. The teacher pulls me out and tells me that the entire class can smell my crap-filled drawers and sends me to the nurse's office while I'm forced to sit on a toilet until my parents can come. I ended up sitting on that toilet with crap covering my legs and crying for about 2 hours. When my parents finally arrived, I had hives covering my legs from that god-forsaken toilet. In conclusion, crapped myself in the first grade, had to sit on the toilet for 2+ hours with crap covering legs, and breaking out in hives. In an Indian restaurant, I went for a pee, and while I was sitting there, I noticed that a few of the tiles were blown, as in they'd come away from the wall. So in my slightly drunken state, I thought, I'll give them a prod. So I did. At that point, a vast quantity of tiles fell off the wall, causing a very loud crash. Everyone in the restaurant heard it. I had to walk back to my table with everyone, including the servers, looking at me. I never went back. When I was in high school, somebody in my family forgot to flush after going number 2. At some point, my dog discovered this and proceeded to treat herself to a snack. I went upstairs after I caught a hint of a very foul smell to find the contents of the toilet dragged across the hallway carpet. My mum and I spent the rest of the night cleaning it. The worst part was how sick my dog got. She spent the next few days vomiting up foamy brown spew that reeked like you wouldn't believe. Mine would probably be having a violent period the morning after a night out whilst staying with my then-girlfriend in her dorm room, conducted in her ensuite bathroom with little to no sound insulation. I'd snuck out of bed around 6 a.m., praying to every available deity to leave her peacefully sleeping while I experienced my furious bowel vacation. Regrettably, this was not to be. As soon as I sat on the unfortunate porcelain throne, I unleashed a torrent of gas and liquid not usually experienced outside of volcanic eruptions. This was the pyroclastic flow of crapping. The noise was inescapable and any attempt to control it just resulted in greater volume, except furnished with an embarrassingly puckered nuance. After the storm, I carefully opened the door, once again silently praying that my girlfriend would be clearly asleep, blissfully oblivious to the tarnation I'd just inflicted to her bathroom. Instead, I saw her shaking with laughter under the covers. Possibly not the worst experience one can have with a toilet, as Elvis would no doubt attest, but it was extremely embarrassing. I was on holiday in Florida with my girlfriend, now ex, and her family. Went to the toilet in the hotel room when we got there. Crap was too big to go down the crappy American toilet. Blocked and then proceeded to overflow after I attempted a double flush. Janitor was called, and the look he gave me when he left the bathroom was akin to a Vietnam flashback. In addition to this, the water leaked downstairs into the lobby. In conclusion, took a crap, blocked a toilet, traumatized a janitor, and flooded the lobby. American toilet? In case you didn't realize, Americans are done with taking Europe's crap. One of my good friends earned the nickname Iceberg by doing just this. Be proud of that crap. Clogging someone else's toilet is almost a rite of passage. It's like being a dog who pees on a fire hydrant to claim their territory. It's your toilet, your grounds now. The best part? You clog up the toilet, they fix it for you. First step in dominating your friends and becoming the alpha. When I was about 8, I accidentally zipped the outer skin of my pee-pee up in my zipper. My mum had to come and unzip me, which was not awesome. Things got pretty mangled up, so we're driving to the hospital, and my mum is yelling at my dad, "I told you we should have circumcised him." My dad is yelling at me for being such an idiot, and I'm just bawling my eyes out in the back seat. Good times. Ended up having to get circumcised because the doctor was worried that it would heal up with scar tissue that would cause problems down the line. On the plus side, I got a week off school. At my then-girlfriend's house, and I've got to pee. Excuse myself to take a leak, and I find myself fighting 2 streams. My pee hole was semi-blocked from my self-pleasure activities conducted a few hours previous. Is there a name for this? Typically, the blockage is only temporary, but on this occasion the 2-streamed dragon did not waver. One stream hit the water as the second sprayed the seat, wall, and floor. In hindsight, I should have remedied the trouble by simply squatting lower. In my panic, I used the only available tool I had, my hand, to bank stream 2 back into the bowl. I spent the next 10 minutes cleaning a good amount of pee off the floor and walls. Definitely the time I got locked inside a bathroom stall in the middle of Moscow. I closed and locked the stall door behind me and commenced my business. A lot of vodka the night before was doing a number on me, and I thought about my girlfriend sitting outside wondering what was going on. A few minutes passed, and when I tried to exit, I immediately saw the latch was broken. Completely broken. It wouldn't engage at all. That's when I noticed the claw marks around it. It was half broken and there were pry marks too. Clearly, I was not this toilet's first victim. I panicked and started banging really hard. This was one of those stalls that goes all the way to the floor, so I wasn't crawling out. After a few minutes, I was wedging myself against the back wall and trying to kick it out. I was in full-blown panic mode now. Stuck in a foreign country, I speak a little Russian, but my teacher never taught me, "Help me, I'm stuck in the toilet." The Russian word for help is all I could muster up. After 10 minutes, I began to lose hope. This was deep inside the mall and there was no cell signal on my mobile, so I couldn't even embarrassingly text my girlfriend. After sitting back down and collecting myself, I decided to try and crawl out of the 6-inch space at the top. I shoved my huge winter coat and all my shopping bags one by one over the top of the stall. Then I began to try and scale the wall tile. These were high ceilings. I fell a few times and I heard a lot of Russian men murmuring. I figured all my purchases would be gone. Eventually I squeezed over the top and fell 8 feet down on my butt to a lot of stairs. Then I had to explain why I was in the bathroom for 30 minutes. She didn't even believe me when I told her this story. People who hired a personal investigator. What did you uncover? My mum was an attorney who worked in the workers' compensation insurance. Her colleagues were representing a woman who had been gravely injured on the job and deemed totally unable to work. The opposing attorney hired a PI to investigate this woman. Let's call her Jane. They get to court and present the video footage as their platinum evidence, proving that this woman was totally able to work. Here is Jane mowing her lawn. Here she is unloading her groceries from her car. Here she is walking the dog. Here she is going for a run, etc., etc. Jane's attorneys sat there totally quiet. When it was their turn to cross-examine the PI, they declined any questions. Their turn was up next. Who is the first witness for the opposing side? We would like to call Jane's identical twin sister to the stand. Jane's identical twin had moved in with her bedridden sister after the work accident. Full benefits awarded to Jane. Apparently the look on the faces of the opposing attorneys was the stuff lawyers' dreams are made of. My grandfather once hired a PI. See, he has a large vineyard as well as a few engineering projects he's working on. Well, 2 guys pressed charges on him because they claimed they'd hurt their backs working for him, and he needed to pay for all the medical bills, disability, etc. He thought it was a little fishy and hired a PI. The PI uncovered that they had not actually been hurt and documented the two people working at a lumber yard, which has a lot more physical labor than a vineyard. It cost my grandfather a bit to hire him, but way less than what he would have had to pay those two scammers. I think this is probably the most common thing a PI does. Probably number 2 on the list, number 1 being catching cheating spouses. There probably is no number 3. I worked as a PI for a couple of years, and it's really not the case. It costs a heck of a lot of money to hire a PA, and just isn't really worth it when all you have to do is catch your spouse tripping up with an undeleted email or a Facebook message. The whole PI to catch a cheating spouse thing is just something you see on TV and movies a lot. That isn't to say it never happens, it's just not the most common thing. It's almost always disability claims or some other legal matters. If you think about it, it really makes sense. When you're threatened with having to pay a crap load of disability money to someone, you have a lot more to lose, and chances are you're a little more able to afford a PI than some stay-at-home wife whose husband works late a little too often. Well, Mr. Former PI, that may be true in the majority of cases, but I will say that in this group of stories it seems like some people have been crazy paranoid enough to hire PIs to spy on their spouses. Starting with the following. My wife hired one. She found that she was wasting money and that I'm a very boring person. We came from different cultures, but we knew we wanted to be with each other. She's Hispanic, born in another country, and I'm a hillbilly from Appalachia. There was a lot of jealousy early on, both sides, because we simply couldn't relate. After a while, I grew tired of being suspicious and told her that if she wanted to be with someone else, to just tell me and I'll move on. But to just tell me. It was very freeing for me. I guess to her, though, it only made her more suspicious. I got off work at 7 a.m. and there wasn't much to do, and not many places that were open for a couple more hours, so I would go to the gym. And I guess she didn't like not being able to account for the gap between me leaving work and me coming back to the apartment. The guy she hired to follow me around was terrible. I had my routine, get off work, go to the gym, go grab some breakfast, hit up Blockbuster, maybe go to a pet store, we had birds and fish. At the time in the morning these places are empty. Like I said, I'm a boring person. Cut to a few days later, I leave the gym and the new guy behind, head to a restaurant and in comes the new guy from the gym. Creepy. I eat, then leave, go to Blockbuster and in he comes. So here I am suspicious. The next day at the gym, I'm telling my buddy about how creepy it was that the new guy shows up everywhere I go, and he agrees. I'm done working out and tell my buddy that I'm going to leave and that I'm going to a specific pet store, and if the guy leaves the gym right after me, that my buddy should head to the same pet store. And that was what happened. I go to the store, a couple of minutes later, in walks the guy, and a minute after that, in comes my buddy. We ended up pinning the guy to the floor, I asked why, and he starts saying, "It's just a job," and that he ain't seen nothing. We release him back into the wild with the order that he's not to show up at the gym again. I get home, call her up, and say that she hired the biggest idiot around and that she needs to stop wasting money. She asks, "What happened?" I tell her to ask him since she gave him money. Her jealousy died down after that. Well, that and I made the ultimate quote to her that made sense. I said, "If I was getting laid as much as you think I am, wouldn't I be a lot happier?" And that was that. For those folks hoping for a different ending, sorry to disappoint. We've been together for almost a quarter of a century and everything is fine. Maybe she just couldn't believe that she was involved with someone so boring. If a PI followed me around, goes to work 5 minutes late every day, comes home from work at the same time every day, stays at home until work the next day, stays at home all day on the weekends. I just hope he doesn't reveal what kind of adult content I watch. This pretty much sums up my life. In between work, they would see me take a whole bunch of green herb and watch It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia for hours. If my significant other hired a PI on me, I'd be fricking livid. Livid's a strange name for a mistress. I worked as a PI one summer for a friend of my dad's. Busted 3 people faking disability claims. Oh man, was that some really boring work. Previous PI here, work is boring, but when it's exciting, it's very exciting. I found out that PIs are pretty damn expensive. My dad's friend is a PI. He charges $45 to $65 an hour, and also charges for whatever gas or transportation fees he incurs while working. He's pretty well off too. Apparently a lot of people need the service, which surprises me. Lots of PIs are contracted out through various police departments as well, and law firms to disprove or limit damages claims in personal injury cases. My mother hired one to follow my father, who's a 6th grade teacher. So he was cheating on my mum with a former student of his who was 14 years old, and my father was 36 at the time. Was jail involved soon after? No, the parents of the girl didn't press any charges, as they were pretty okay with it. In fact, he married her soon after. A relative of a friend of mine approached me one day and asked if I could help in finding his brother on the internet somehow. His brother had up and left town with no indication of where he was going, leaving a wife and 2 small children behind. They were not separated and still lived with the kids. He took little more than the clothes on his back. They didn't know if he was in trouble, running from someone, or just a deadbeat. They bought me his passworded desktop PC, which was an XP machine and easily cracked. There wasn't anything in the browser history, the documents folders had nothing, and the machine was relatively blank. I did find a World of Warcraft installation though, and inside that was everything I needed. In the game's screenshots folder, I found several shots of his dwarf talking to a female night elf, very cutesy-like, including some chat lines about being together, and flirty emotes. It was clear what he had done. This turbo nerd had left his family for a night elf. In the screenshots, I could see a few add-ons. One particular World of Warcraft add-on, Pratt, that he had installed has a scrollback chat buffer it saves. I was able to locate the settings file containing that buffer, and in it was his last conversation with her before leaving, including an actual address, 800 miles away. Google provided a name, phone number, and satellite photo of her house and car. They were blown away when I gave them his pinpoint location. He called the number right there on his cell phone and asked for him, and sure enough, he was there, probably shocked to crap to get a call from his brother after this disappearing act. As far as I know, he didn't return home, but I'm sure my little detective work made sure the kids got their child support. In conclusion, Turbo Nerd Dwarf Hunter becomes the hunted. Okay, 2 stories of PIs being used to discover scumbags in a row. That makes a nice break from all the cases of personal injury claims. What crappy dads. I hope they got drained for everything they were worth in child support. My uncle hired one to follow his wife after she gave some signs of an affair. She was the principal of a school and claimed she had to work long hours or would attend every single school event and function and would be gone long hours or go on business trips, among other things. Turns out she was totally having relations with the vice principal. He got camera footage of them going to her house during lunch breaks for a quickie on my uncle's bed. He got other footage as well of them meeting up numerous times. It was never confirmed, but some kids at the school later claimed she and the VP had done it in their office. After it all came to light, it dawned on all the other aunts and uncles the many times my aunt would drop off her daughter at random times and random nights at our houses because she had a spontaneous school function and needed a babysitter. It was also mysterious when she surprised my uncle with chest augmentation surgery, which turns out was for the other guy. How does one surprise their spouse with elective surgery? Do they just roll over in bed and say, "Look what the melon fairy left, honey"? In 2005, my mother had suspicions that my father was cheating on her whenever he would go to the Dominican Republic. So she hired an investigator in DR who began to watch my father. The PI express mailed her some pictures of my father and some young woman kissing, dancing, going into hotel rooms, the works. She later found out that the woman was the mother of my father's illegitimate daughter, my half-sister. My father got her a visa and she is living with us now in the States. I was trying to locate a former business account who had failed to return some of my property. PI quickly determined she used several different names, several different birth dates, sometimes claiming to be a senior citizen, and had used 20 different addresses in the previous few years, all over the country. PI was as baffled as I was, said she was either a con artist or mentally ill, or both. Anyways, too bad for her, her new employer had issued a press release about her hiring. Rather than contacting her, I'd already tried that, I'd exchanged some emails with her without results, I contacted her new boss. UPS man delivered my property to my door 2 days later. My mum is a divorce attorney, and she has one she recommends to her clients when necessary. It's all about hiding money. I've talked to the guy and basically he does a lot of online research and looking at money statements and stuff. Sounds actually really boring. I have not hired one, but my now father-in-law hired one when I first started dating his daughter. Funny part is, I was working in the port, with ships, when I stopped at the guard shack and told them that I was being followed by some strange person. The PI pulled up next and had 3 port police officers pull guns on him and tell him to get out of the car. I think he ended up going to jail. Laughed my butt off, but I did sort of feel bad. I would have called the dad up and offered him anything he wanted to know, at only half the cost. My uncle was a PI for a while. He mostly worked for insurance groups and lawyers to make sure the correct person was being served or prosecuted. He would have to figure out stuff like who burned the farm down, John Smith Jr. or John Smith Sr. Was Jane Doe the divorcee or the third wife? One time, this kid wrecked his Ferrari. Kid ended up posting his version of the wreck on MySpace. He told how he'd intentionally wrecked it because his parents didn't get him the Ferrari he wanted. It was very Tom Haverford from Parks and Rec. My mum is a PI. She's asked me to go into bars and adult clubs with her on multiple occasions to observe individuals. Both made sense to remain inconspicuous as well as her own safety. Let me just say, you've never really been to an adult club until you go with your mum. She was trashing girls left and right out of earshot. About 10 years ago, my cousin was deployed in Afghanistan on his second tour. During phone calls back home, his daughter made mention of a new uncle he didn't know existed. My aunt decided to hire a PI for him and found out his wife was cheating with a doctor. Of course, he was heartbroken. The divorce that followed was quick. However, there is a bright side to this. After switching to a reserve unit, he was able to finish college and go to law school. His ex-wife? She was dumped by the doctor not long after the divorce. She attempted to reconcile, but my cousin refused. He's remarried. She lives with a group of friends in some run-down house. When I was 10, my parents separated and went through a nasty divorce. Sometime during all of that, he hired a PI to follow my mum around. The PI concluded that my mother was a working girl. She did escort service and hung around the doctor's conventions. The PI took photos and logged everything. My dad snuck into the house my mother and I lived in with a camcorder and recorded the discovery of a ledger containing all of her clients and the money exchange. He leveraged it in the divorce so he didn't get bent over entirely. My dad didn't tell me any of this until I was 17 or so. I didn't believe it until I thought back and remembered some things. She had a pager, and back in the 90s only a few types of people had pagers: doctors and working girls. She would suddenly be gone late at night if I woke up. She would always say she was out grocery shopping. I also remember walking in on her wearing a revealing dress made of leather. No more revealing than what girls wear to the club, but hey, that crap is weird when it's your mum and you're 10. Anywho, my dad still throws it at me when he wants to prove how much better of a person he is than my mother or my stepdad, who married a working girl. In her defense, she was paying her way to become an RN, which she is now. In conclusion, PI followed my mum for my dad during a nasty divorce. Found out she was a working girl. Dad holds grudge to this day and tells his kids about it. And another piece of evidence that many spouses apparently hire PIs to discover cheating spouses. Okay, so I'll bite. Nothing like hunting down a psycho ex or anything like that, but it's interesting enough. So I was living in England and had an uncle living in assisted living in California. He was 95 at the time, a little fuzzy about some things, but on the whole, sharp as a tack. He was deeply religious and attended church weekly. A couple of women from the church had made friends with him, drove him to church, bought him trinkets and whatnot, and basically took care of him, sort of. Sounded okay to me. Heck, I was in England, what was I going to do? The only thing that jarred me a little bit was one time when I was talking to the woman on the phone, one of them told me that my uncle had signed over power of attorney to them. That struck me as a little odd. My uncle and I weren't really close, but being his heir, along with my brother, wouldn't he have told me about it? I shrugged it off, though. Again, what was I going to do? I was 6,000 miles away. Besides, and this is what gets a lot of people, he was of sound mind. He was a free agent, so it was really none of my fricking business. A year or two go by, I check on him periodically and everything seems fine. I come home one night and my phone is ringing. It's the assisted care residence. Crap, what's happened? Is he dead? He's 97 fricking years old. I was expecting it any day. No, it's these two little old ladies. They're trying to get my uncle to sign over power of attorney to them. Wait a minute, hadn't he already done that? The alarm bells go off. Something is deeply wrong and it was going to make at least 24 hours to get back to California, given connections, flights, renting a car, blah blah blah. So I call a PI from England, tell him the situation, and as soon as I can get to the part about the women, he stops me and says, "Wait, let me tell you how this story goes." He then proceeds to tell me that this is a common scam. These women cruise the churches looking for these little old guys who on the surface have no family to speak of and healthy retirement and investment accounts. So I get my butt back to California ASAP. Unfortunately, my uncle has signed nothing. Although at this point, they're pushing him hard. They'd even kidnapped him and taken him to an attorney and tried to get him to sign over POA to them. Little did they know who they were dealing with. My dad's side of the family sets the gold standard for stubbornness. I learned this early on when my dad said no, that was it, give it up, because that was an answer that was not going to change. My uncle, all 100 pounds and 97 years of him, had dug in his heels. So we signed over POA to me and now the hunt begins. Where were his accounts? These women handed over nothing to me, a few receipts but no accounts, nothing. So this PI and I ended up hanging out for a few days tracking everything down. I can't begin to tell you how much I learned from this man, a complete original. Vietnam vet, former Navy SEAL, carried a knife in his boot and a gun in his shoulder holster. So he shows me it's mostly research and that I resonate to since I work in research. Painstaking, boring, turning over one pebble at a time kind of investigation. Knowing how to talk to people, how to observe. It requires a massive amount of patience. We went to every bank within 20 miles, and by schmoozing and showing my POA, we found what we thought was every account. I then went over everything. They had played a shell game, borrowing from him, hadn't quite stolen from him, but it took quite a while to figure out what they'd done. Then I find the pièce de résistance. They had him sign over all of his retirement accounts to them, or more specifically to the younger one, being a spry 81 years old. So we do some further investigation. Turns out this one is broke. Looks like she sent it back to the Philippines or something. She spent a lot of time in Vegas. So here's how it shakes out, a common scam. These two little Jezebels made a play for my uncle, who fell for the younger one, hook, line and sinker. They get him to sign over all of his retirement accounts to them, and then all they have to do is outlive him. At 81 and 83, respectively, with my uncle 96, it should be easy. So I confront them, told them that I knew what they were doing and I had the evidence. I didn't really, I only strongly suspected, and that I could turn them in. So they spilled the beans, told me what they'd done. They swore that they had only borrowed the money. We signed it all back over, I didn't turn them in, I figured it would all come out in the wash anyway. I didn't want to see them go to jail, and I wasn't sure I could prove it anyway. But if it wasn't for this PI who had my back, they would have gotten away with it. I'm a firm believer now, I learned a crap ton for him. Now for the editorial. This crime is rampant, intimidating, bamboozling, and ripping off the elderly. Most DAs won't touch it. If you even get a whiff that an elderly relative is being abused or ripped off, if it even crosses your mind, step in immediately. Kick butt and take names. You may be the only defense they have. But I'll tell you, it turned out to be one of the most interesting experiences of my life. My uncle got the last laugh. He outlived both of them and passed away peaceably at 100 years old, with me there with him. One of the last things he told me was that he had forgiven them for what they'd done. In conclusion, elderly uncle is nearly scammed out of $500,000 by a couple of Jezebels cruising the churches. PI steps in and saves the day. I learn a crap ton. We discovered that the driver who hit me not only went off the side of the road where I was, legally four-wheeling on a quad, she was talking on the cell phone, looking into the passenger seat, driving with no insurance and a revoked license because of previous convictions for causing accidents. After the truck, pushing my quad into a T-boned position, plowing up so much dirt in front of us that after 70 feet it finally came up to a halt. The investigator had evidence that she was driving 35 miles per hour in a 25 zone and she didn't brake after the impact. After the truck came to a stop, she jumped out and started running away, but witnesses caught her and held her there. My friend, who was sitting behind me, both of us 14, were carted off in ambulances and I never saw this woman's face. The trooper wrote the report that I, 14 years old, had taken an RV instead of an ATV and pulled out in front of the woman, though it was clear the accident happened off the roadway. The trooper interrogated me while I was lying on the ground waiting for ambulances before my parents even arrived. I was in shock while he rephrased the question, "Have you had any alcoholic or illegal substances today?" several times. My neighbors finally asked him to wait until my parents arrived. In the hospital room, he questioned me further while my parents were on their way. The nurse had to ask him to stop as my neck was being evaluated, and I had not even had pain medication yet. The accident was deemed my fault, although there were two eyewitnesses who testified against the woman to the trooper, and later in court I was told by the DMV I would have to pay the woman's truck damages before I was allowed to get a driver's license. And I carried SR22 insurance for 5 years after I received it. The investigator uncovered proof that the trooper knew the woman who hit me and was possibly friends with her. For the months in between the accident and when the investigation was complete, I fought an awful amount of guilt, believing it was my fault and not having any memory of the accident. My friend's leg was badly injured and required extensive surgeries over the next 5 years, and she was visiting from Texas and had to be medevaced back there via helicopter, which left her family with a huge financial burden. During that time, I even considered taking my own life and took one attempt that thankfully failed. My parents took the case to the state Supreme Court over the course of the next 3 years, and when we finally came to trial, the judge said the only way the report could be cleared and the financial obligations relieved is if the state trooper took back his statement. When we began going that route, we were told the trooper had been dismissed from the force for wrongful behavior and his testimony was worth noting. That was an expensive lesson in corruption. The financial stress contributed greatly to my parents' divorce. However, if we hadn't hired the investigator, we may have went on thinking it was my fault. I'm very thankful to know that it truly wasn't. Teachers. What's something a student of yours has said that made you lose hope for them? Principal at an inner-city high school. I had to sit down with a student who had been caught plagiarizing for a second time. This time, from The Onion. I had a student use The Onion as a source. Specifically this one. Barry Bonds took performance-enhancing substances, reports everyone who has ever watched baseball. Hey now, the inability to tell satire from news is a really popular style of idiocy these days. There was this kid named Lawrence who was one of those typical wallflower Catholic kids I grew up with. His dad was in our scout troop as a leader and was really meticulous. Like everything had to be just so. In the late 70s, most of the troop leaders had a relaxed dress code. But Lawrence's dad dressed like a 1940s scouting manual model, complete with brown uniform and wide-brimmed hat. Everything was pleated and pressed. His dad drove an old MG Roadster that was constantly breaking down. They were upper class and his mum was not in the picture. But the way Lawrence's dad picked on him was brutal. Stand up straight, Lawrence. Chin up. Be a good lad. Chest out. Chin up. Lawrence, don't go over there. It's dirty over there. Lawrence, stand straight and tall when I address you. Don't be rude. Wait until I've started eating before you start. Lawrence, do I have to raise my voice, Lawrence? By high school, Lawrence just gave up. He wasn't perfect enough, so why bother? He stared into space, he attended school in person only, just a blank and hollow shell. His clothing didn't change, it only became dirtier. His hair got long, he lost weight, and his clothes just hung on him. I think the only way to deal with his dad's control issues was passive resistance. By his senior year in high school, he flunked out. Not sure what happened to him after that. High school teacher here. Dude, if you don't start coming to class and doing the work, you'll fail out of school. School's done nothing for me. I'm gonna rap to pay the bills, bro. Kid was an awful musician. Couldn't make a beat, couldn't write a rhyme to save his life. I've now had 3 successful rappers graduate from my class. Years later, 2 of them have given up on the whole thing as more than a hobby, and 1 is still touring Europe. So when I have some kid rap terribly at me and say that's how he's going to make his money as an excuse for not doing anything in my class, I just laugh and then advise them to work on their flow. I work at an arts high school that attracts a lot of talented kids. You can still tell who's going to actually have a career in the arts because only a small number have the correct combination of dedication and talent, and an even smaller subset have humility and the ability to work with others. Yep, I have a friend I consistently second-guessed when he went on about the fact he was gonna make it one day. Didn't believe him, but he made it. Then again, he was always supremely talented, and I guess he finally figured out how to work hard in the end. Kid, totally serious. I'm gonna drop out. I'll make money off YouTube. How many views are your videos getting? Kid, I have 4 subscribers, so I just need a few more. I had a student who has a severe mental disability but was quite gifted in maths, but he's told myself, other adults in the room, the special education department head, and school psychologist he is going to drop out of high school to be a YouTuber. Mum and Dad are in serious denial of this fact, but he's dead set on it. You can see it in his eyes. In other news, it seems that the generation of students I have now want to be either YouTubers or professional video games players. I was born in the late 80s, and when I was their age, I remember having classmates being sternly told the actual statistics of them becoming professional athletes. I still have 2 to 3 classmates, graduated high school in 2007, that are dead set on making it into the NFL, but never played in high school or college. I feel this is the same with kids I'm seeing now. They don't truly understand the extremely low chance of them becoming pro in social media. Because they're growing up watching these people, of course they want to be like them. Just like the kids of our generation wanted to be movie stars or professional athletes. It's just that the world is moving into a digital age. Incident number 1. Can we just not learn this? It's hard. We should skip it. Incident number 2. I don't have to get good grades. My grandfather owns a house, and when he dies, my family is gonna sell it for $1 million, so I won't ever have to get a job. I have a distant aunt like that. Screwed my mother and all her siblings and close family over, manipulating her father to change the will on his deathbed. She wanted all the money so she'd never have to work again. She spent it all inside 6 months and is now completely broke. She destroyed any shred of love any of my family had for her. Really, truly a horrible person. My wife told me this story about the time she was lecturing a kid on why he should try to do well in school. She asked him what he wanted to be when he grows up. His response, I want to be in jail. That's where my dad and uncle is. She had no response, probably the only time in her career that she was left speechless by a student. Frick, that's actually really sad. How about, if you study you could get a job as a guard in their jail and make life nice for your dad and uncle as well as seeing them every day. I had a student who was always acting up. I constantly tried talking to him about his behavior, and I wrote plenty of referrals. Throughout all of this, I would email and call his mother, but never got a response. One day he was pacing around and texting someone. I told him to put his phone away and he said, "I can't, I'm not too happy right now." So I said, "Will you take it out into the hall and I'll give you 1 minute?" His response really shook me. He said, "No, I'll sit down. I just want my mom to turn the water back on." When all you know about a student is what you see in the classroom, it's easy to forget that they may not have a great home life. So I did wonder, is there any hope for him? But it also wasn't truly any fault of his own. He just had a crap home life where he was stricken by poverty. This is how my niece is. It's terrible. She's 15 and should be worrying about school and college. Instead, she worries about getting the younger kids up, getting them dressed and fed. On Monday, she kept asking me if I could drop off some bread and milk and cereal. It's just so frustrating because there are 3 adults in that house and none of them work. They're just junkies. We have called Child Protection Services more times than we can count. Her mother had her at 15 and then just kept having kids. My sister-in-law also grew up in a similar home to the one she's providing now. I really just think it's one of those cycles that she just can't break. Her thought process is, I grew up like this, so why make it any different from my kids? All 4 of them have different dads and only one of them has a dad that's involved. I want to be a substance dealer, but the cool kind. You know, the ones that wear a suit and carry a briefcase. He was 17 at the time and completely serious. He was expelled a month later for jumping another student. When is the teacher coming? This wasn't the first lesson I had with this child. I teach computer science in university. I get a lot of freshmen that picked the major because they heard it was a high-paying major, but don't actually like the subject they're in. The worst was a recent student that asked if they could just do the assignments by hand. They don't want to use a computer, they didn't really like using them. People use computers too much. I don't start doing that. Also thought computers could do too much and wanted people to stop using them. Bruh, this is a programming course for computers, in a major about making computers do things. You're going to need to use a computer. Needless to say, I told them this probably wasn't the major for them. Is it just me, or does it sound like everyone's elderly parents complaining at the pace the world is moving in? A true old soul already, and this comment was from 2016, when we'd all been solidly using laptops at uni for a decade. I used to teach science in public high school, had to convince a sophomore that trees came from seeds, and I blew his mind. I had one 4-year-old who couldn't hold a pencil. He couldn't remember how to pick it up and didn't have the strength to push it down hard enough on the paper to get any leverage. He couldn't color, had no motor skills whatsoever. He didn't have a dominant hand. His parents liked to leave him at my learning center for an hour, even though he couldn't use the bathroom on his own. He was 4 years old and didn't have the slightest grasp of the alphabet and couldn't retain anything we taught him. It took a month to get him to count to 10. My theory on all of this is that on top of a learning disability or developmental delay, his mum was in denial, and of course he was a natural lefty, who was forced to use his right hand, but because of his disability, he couldn't, and ended up not developing any motor skills in either hand. Poor kid. Had a 4th grader say he didn't need school because he was going to have a wife and she would do everything. Same student, while disrupting the entire class, also said, "What are you gonna do? I know you can't hit me." At the time, the kid was visiting the school social worker multiple times a week. Dad wouldn't hold a job while Mum did everything and learned from Dad to disrespect rules and that getting into trouble meant nothing. Kid was expelled shortly after that for beating and holding another student against the wall and threatening to kill him. We wish we could have done something for the kid, but it was a small private school with limited resources and the parents didn't help with reinforcement. We were happy when the parents pulled the 2 older kids out as well, since they were starting to cause a lot of problems as well. I taught lower elementary. Most teachers will get frustrated at some point by how hard it can be to get a child who may be lacking upstairs some extra help. This was the case with one of my favorite students. It didn't matter that he couldn't do any of the work that his peers were doing due to his incredibly low IQ. He was performing at his ability level, but he was just so nice to everyone. I had set time aside every day to help him with his reading. We were using the short story of The Ugly Duckling. It had 1 short sentence on each page, and after 2 weeks, he could get through it with minimal help. However, reading the words isn't all there is to reading. I had asked him if he could tell me what the story was about, since we had spent time on it every day for the last 2 weeks. He started his oral retelling off great, and I'm super excited. This is a huge deal for my man because up until this point, I couldn't get any retell or comprehension out of him. I'm super pumped and he is feeding off my energy, and he's so proud of himself. This kid is glowing. We're only 3/4 of the way through the story though, and we come up to the end of The Ugly Duckling, and he's telling me that the duckling changes. This word took us forever to say, much less read, but then he stops and goes into his deep thinking stage. I prod him a little bit. He changes? What does he change into there, buddy? He brings his eyes back from the ceiling and then with the biggest smile he shouts out, "A butterfly!" A girl, 8th grade, told me she wanted to have kids, 2 to 3, by the time she was 18 so she could have the energy to keep up with them and then work the pole to support them. My wife had a student in 3rd grade who refused to do any writing assignments. My wife told him that she was going to call his parents to explain what was going on if he didn't start doing his work. He said, "I don't care. My mom said I don't have to do anything I don't want to do. Rules don't apply to me." My wife called his mum and his mum told my wife that she, meaning my wife, just has to understand how her son is, and if he doesn't want to do the work, then he doesn't have to. His behaviors all made sense after that, and it was a very tough year. He stopped doing all work and started harassing other kids, probably partially due to boredom since he was doing nothing else by the end of the year. As long as he was happy, my wife couldn't get the mum on board. "I ain't doing any of that crap. My mum already said she's signing the papers, to drop out, as soon as I turn 16. Look, I know that many people often drop out and end up going back to get a GED. I sincerely hope this young man turns his life around. He'd had an incredibly tough upbringing, and along with that, a history of violent conduct in and out of school. I tried my best to remain patient with him in my room and to motivate him any way I could. At the point he said those words, I just don't think there was anything more I could do. That was last year, and he hasn't been back to school this year. I really hope that at some point he figures things out and gets his life going in a positive direction, whatever that might be." University professor here. A student last term never purchased the textbook and thus never did his homework. He sat in the back and spaced out all class, failed one exam, and barely passed the other. He came to me during the final week of class to ask me if he could do all of his missed assignments, and then ask why I didn't remind him to do them. Bro, this is university. I am not chasing after you. I had one who stopped coming to class for the last 6 weeks of the semester, and instead of writing the essay on the exam, wrote a 2-page rant about how unfair it was of me to base the exam on stuff that happened in class. Also in the rant, complains about how I had not called her to remind her to do assignments, come to class, or find out what was on the exam. A good reminder that many students aren't too far removed from school kids. No judgment, I was a moron in my first year of uni. Also, these two both seem in the making to become prime Karens. I work at an alternative school for kids kicked out of public school for severe emotional and behavioral issues. A lot of them are going to require government services for the rest of their lives. There's usually not just one thing they say, but we know that they will never have normal lives. It's a little disheartening to hear a 6-year-old scream that he's going to fricking kill you, especially when you were playing tag not 5 minutes before. There's a young boy who can be very sweet and is an adorable blonde butterball. However, he has pretty severe behavioral problems and gets restrained at some point on a daily basis. I saw his parents one day because they live in government-subsidized housing close by and walk him to school. It was 50 degrees out and the little boy was in a basketball jersey and shorts. His parents looked exactly how I expected them to look and were rude to all the staff they interacted with. It showed me that no matter how much we do, he spends most of his life with his crappy parents. Having a child with behaviors doesn't inherently make someone a bad parent, but in our program specifically, most of the students come from harsh backgrounds which either causes or exacerbates their behavior. I had a student say, "I don't need to learn any of this. I won't use it in real life." When I tried to explain why math was going to be useful, he responded, "You're a dumb idiot. Watch me get rich without even going to school." I mean, it's been done, but probably not the best idea. Paraphrased, are we ever going to use this as an adult? I mean, you won't, but some of the smart kids will. I worked in vet clinics for 15 years. Here's an example of something I heard every day. Me. "Okay, go ahead and set the carrier on the scale." Owner. "Do you want me to take the cat out?" No, we don't want the cat loose in the clinic. Just go ahead and put the carrier with the cat on the scale. Owner puts the cat carrier on the scale. I write down the weight. "Okay, let's head into the exam room." "But how much does the cat weigh?" "When we get you into a secured room, we'll get the cat out and weigh the carrier." "But how will you know how much the cat weighs?" Algebra. This happens every day. I had one student at a bilingual school in Mexico, who after being at the school and supposedly learning English for 5+ years, still couldn't speak it and barely tried to make any effort to learn anything. Didn't do assignments and failed almost every test. When we mentioned it to her parents, their attitude was that she doesn't really need it because she'll just marry someone who'll take care of everything for her. My thought was, who would want to marry someone who doesn't know anything and makes no effort? Just this week, I have a student in grade 5 that's pretty oppositional, has a tough home life, etc. He doesn't always try very hard, but sometimes I can see he's trying to put in some effort. We were talking about how I grade them and he interrupts the conversation with, "I don't care at all about my grades." And I thought, here we go, another rant about how unfair school is. I just want to know that I can keep getting better. Perfect. I got chills. Thank goodness. Excuse me for diverting from the subject momentarily. Sometimes I just need a more uplifting story in the middle of all this gloom. This is probably going to be buried, but I like to reference this one from time to time. I had a student who was a hoarder. He was one of those kids that we all remember who had the backpack that was filled with everything for every class. It looked like this kid carried around a small grocery cart on his back. One day I'm walking him to his locker to look for an assignment that I knew I'd given him before, and I smelled this nasty smell. Big surprise, it's his locker. Open it to find 89 cartons of chocolate milk stacked inside. That's not all. On the floor he had a pretty large mason jar filled with what looked like dead bugs. I asked him why he had so much milk in his locker, and he said, stone-faced, to dip the bugs in. Never sure what happened to this kid when he left, but that was the most disturbing for me. I'm a second-grade teacher, and I have a boy who lies constantly about anything. He was on camera watching the footage of himself punching a student in the face, and he crossed his arms and said, "If I didn't do it, then I didn't do it." The worst part is his mum believes every word he says and attacks the school for making him accountable for his actions. He's going to do something as an adult and go to jail. When they pull him away, I know he's going to be yelling, "If I didn't do it, I didn't do it!" 7th grade in the US. On the first day of class, the students each said what they did over the summer. One kid said he went to Germany. The kid sitting next to him audibly asked where that was, and if it was further away than Chicago. I thought he must have misunderstood what the first guy said, so I intervened. Chicago is about 100 miles away. Germany is in Europe. That's another continent entirely. The kid looked blankly at me and asked me what that was. The word continent. I was dumbfounded and gestured at the map of the world on the wall and pointed at the continents, thinking he must have learned to pronounce them differently or something. But nope, he literally didn't know what they were and never realized that the picture on the wall of the geography room was actually a map of the world? He was in 7th grade and he didn't know what a continent was, or have even a toddler's level of understanding of what a map was. I once had a student who didn't know what the answer to 5 times 5 was. This was in the preparatory year of a private medical university. Fear for the patients if she ever graduates. My mum is a nursing instructor and she has horror stories of people who have become nurses. The bad students are rude and entitled, and they either skip work, lie on it, or expect my mum to do every assignment with them, step by step after class. When the student starts to fail because they're not meeting the standards, the people above my mum will give them the alternative, easy busy work assignments, so they can pass the program and the school will start to have good statistics. So if you get a nurse someday who's a butthole or seems like an idiot, then they probably are. Me. What country did the United States gain independence from? Student. Hispanic. Tynesha, that's an ethnicity. Nuh-uh, it's a country in Africa. Me, internally. Tynesha, you're freaking 13, what the hell? And then externally. Okay, can someone help Tynesha answer the question? Another student. France. I teach English in Japan and sometimes hear, I don't understand this because I'm Japanese. What a well-constructed sentence for a Japanese person. Well, they say it in Japanese. I had a senior say he didn't think it was fair. I've grown to hate that word, by the way. He didn't think it was fair that my exams used short answer questions instead of multiple choice. She said, some of us just aren't good writers. I responded that if you're a senior in college and can't string a few sentences together, something has gone wrong. She stormed out of class. My college juniors and seniors, yes plural, who tried to justify the Holocaust because there were a lot of Jewish people in Europe at the time. To make it worse, almost half of my family died in the Holocaust. They don't know this, not that it matters. Had my Year 2 private student try to turn over his study table on me. It didn't work, I slammed it down, and then screamed at me to write out his homework because that's what his mum pays me for. There's still hope, but it made me so sad and angry as he assumed I was of a lesser position than him just because I was being paid. Like, yeah, nah, bye. Minimum wage workers. What customer rules aren't you paid enough to actually enforce? I worked graveyard at a Jack in the Box near a community college. The line would get so long, I decided to give out a mystery treat to every passenger in the car. From free orange juice to Jumbo Jacks, everyone was a winner. Reminds me of the time I went to Taco Bell late one night and ordered a single taco, and when I came to grab my order from the drive-thru, I got a huge sack of like 20 tacos. I hit the mega jackpot. People sleeping in their cars overnight. I consistently work night shifts and see it all the time. We're meant to tap the windows and ask them to leave, but really, if someone has to sleep in their car and we have a huge empty car park, why kick someone while they're down? My favorite old folks aren't usually charged as much as they should be. I'm not about to tack on an extra 50 cents for extra peanut butter. If someone was awful to me, you bet your butt they would be paying the full price. I'd also give away muffins that wouldn't be sold the next morning. Super against the rules according to the boss because it encourages vagrants. But I also told my manager it was a dumb rule and I was doing it anyway, but wouldn't say where they were from. He didn't mind and didn't let the boss know. It didn't increase vagrants coming in, no harm, no foul. Sometimes those muffins were my meal of the day too. At Christmas, I forgot to charge someone for the box of groceries they were getting as a special treat for their kids. She was someone that always came in just for a coffee and for a treat on Fridays, and was the nicest lady living on a small pension. She'd always rather spend money on someone else, so she deserved it. Yup, giving away muffins is a love language to your favorite customers in hospitality. I remember that feeling of giving the nice ones something for being decent folks, made for great regular customers who would brighten your day next time they came in. I worked at an airline. The minimum change fee was $75. At the time, that amount of money would take me about 10 hours to earn. Let me tell you how many ways I found to waive that fee. Oh, what a great conversation about weather. Let me waive that fee for you. Oh, and your child is crying in the background. Let me waive that fee for you. I found any reason to waive that. In Disney World, I worked at Cirque du Soleil. They would throw away all the food at the end of the night, but nothing got me more upset than the cotton candy. It cost them like 15 cents a bag to make, but sold it for $5.50, and then they would throw it away. I used to grab bags and give them to the guests for free. Also gave away popcorn and hot dogs and stuff. No use letting it go to waste. The Cirque team was extremely small, maybe 14 employees on payroll, with about 8 on shift at a given time. Yet we serviced over 6,400 people in 2 shows each day. A typical shift went like this. Go in at 4 p.m. and prepare for 6. Management will give you how many hot dogs, cotton candy, pretzels, and popcorn to make. When 5:30 rolled around, we opened the doors and sold. Then, after the show finishes at 7:30, live show, so it varied, we would restock depending on how good we did during the first show, and the number we're expecting for the second. We make adjustments and prepare for the next show. Around 8:30, we open the doors, sell. Once the show is on, there will rarely be someone buying stuff. They spent $80 a ticket to watch an 85-minute show. I'd be darned if they were going to miss a second of it. After the show, 3,200 people are rushing out, so when the theater was about 80% empty, if I knew we were going to have an abundance of stuff left over, I was doing it long enough to accurately gauge, I'd just give it away. No harm done. I worked at the Costco hot dog stand. One of my coworkers volunteer tested at an animal shelter. She would take the extra hot dogs at the end of the night and bring them to the shelter to feed the dogs. Management found out and fired him over it. It teed me off because he stole nothing but garbage. People paying with expired coupons for anything that wasn't medicine. I worked in retail pharmacy and we had to let customers make their front store purchases at the pharmacy if they wanted to. I just scanned all the expired coupons anyway because it wasn't worth the trouble of having an argument with the customer and increasing the amount of time that they were on the line. Obviously, with those RX coupons, it was another story, as overriding that could be considered insurance fraud. At minimum wage, the only things I would care about are the things that would get me arrested or would keep me up at night. Not a worker, but I was being assisted by a minimum wage worker at a chain arcade. Me and my friend were figuring out what we could afford to get from the little rewards area, and we started to sit down and begin counting. He saw us and said, "No, don't worry, they don't pay me enough to care." We still felt bad, so we put some of the candy we got back. He started scanning our point cards and the rewards. We had an extra 5 to 10 pieces of candy, and he was like, "Oh, looks like you can't afford it." Then he slid all of the candy into the bag and handed it to us. 10 out of 10 employee. I hope he's doing well. I work at a pizza joint that has a redemption center, kinda like Chuck E. Cheese. I do this all the time, especially for birthday kids. If it's their birthday and they want something, I just ask them, "Well, it's your birthday? What do you want? Pick anything you like." They want the thing that has 1,000 tickets? Fine. It costed us $5, and your parents probably gave you $10 anyway. It's your birthday. You just go be a prince or princess. A couple of years ago, I worked at a deli inside of a Walmart neighborhood market, aka just groceries. Every 3 hours, we had to mark rotisserie chickens and other foods on the hot plates down 50%. If people were kind or looked like they could use some help, I would mark them down almost any time. I couldn't tell you how many folks came in who I would just give a few extra slices of cheese or ham to for free, and just how their faces lit up. They definitely needed it more than Walmart. Having worked in multiple movie theaters, I can tell you that the ushers absolutely give 0 Fs about you trying to sneak food in from the outside. It's a minimum wage job, they have no interest in hassling people or getting into a confrontation over the bag of peanut M&Ms in your purse. It's a million times easier to just turn a blind eye. There was one family that used to come to the movies almost every week. They would always bring their grandma, who was in a wheelchair, and she always had a box of pizza on her lap covered by a shawl, and this was obvious to everyone. It's a fresh, hot pizza, for frick's sake. You can smell it from 30 feet away. I honestly just thought about telling them that I didn't care if they were bringing in food, but then I thought that maybe that's the only reason they brought grandma, and I didn't want to take that away from her. I love the extra little considerate touch of holding your tongue to specifically make sure that the grandma is continued to be included in family movie night. Although it would be pretty callous of the family to just cut her out once they knew they could bring pizza themselves. I used to work in town at an auto parts store with a lot of gang activity. Every now and then, some monstrously muscular dude covered in tats would walk in and grab 2 batteries off the rack. We assumed for the hydraulics most were using, and walk out. We would just wave and say, "Have a nice day," rather than get the crap beat out of us. We'd just write it off as a store loss. Using the bathroom if you aren't actually a customer. We're the only place open at 3 in the morning. I'm not going to tell people to go find somewhere else. I had this backfire a number of times on me, actually. After relenting on the not a public restroom rule, people just messed the entire bathroom up to say thank you. Years back, I worked at a local chain restaurant that had a drive-thru. One of the owners would occasionally come through and reiterate that we were only to give 1 ketchup packet per order of fries at the drive-thru. Our fry orders were huge and 1 packet was nowhere near enough, so as soon as he was gone, we'd go back to throwing handfuls of ketchup packets into the bags. Long time ago, I ordered a bunch of Taco Bell for myself and 4 friends. It was about 2 a.m. and we were surf fishing in a small SoCal town. Anyway, after the highly stoned worker handed me my huge bag of fries, he asked me what kind and how much sauce I wanted. I replied, "A frick ton of mild, please," and he proceeded to hand me an entire box of it. I work as a lifeguard at a theme park, first job, and one thing some customers do is pretend they're going to faint or they're having heat-related problems, so they can get us to call into base and get them free food or drinks. Sometimes I really wish I was a bad person. They really do know how to game the system. Not me, but my boyfriend worked a store in a large mall. The store refuses to put security sensors in because it ruins the laid-back vibe of the store. They wanted you to chase shoplifters. One girl working there almost got maced. A male coworker was threatened to be stabbed. He just didn't care and wouldn't chase. He would just tell the manager on duty what happened. Some of the managers never listened. The security in the mall is awful. So bad that a different store a friend was working at where their employees actually got attacked for trying to stop a shoplifter, that store hired their own private security to protect their employees. Nobody working minimum wage should get threatened to be fired for not chasing shoplifters who are threatening them bodily harm. I've worked a ton of retail jobs. When they do training about shoplifting, the first thing every single one said was never ever chase a shoplifter. Get a good look at them and call the cops, but it's not your job to catch criminals, and it's illegal to detain people. All you can do is call the cops. If the item doesn't have a price, I usually just let the customer name it if they're nice. We're supposed to have someone check the price, but that usually takes an incredibly long time, and as everyone's busy, I save that for the buttholes. I worked at a deli and I had the power to override the price per pound anytime I felt like it. So if a customer was upset, I'd give them half off. Or if they had a cool shirt, I didn't really care. This reminds me of when I worked in a supermarket and got minimum wage. They would sometimes ask me to work the bakery. I'd give the kids free cookies and then offer one to the parent. I read here that Dairy Queen requires you to charge for anything extra when ringing someone up. But after you purchase it, if you ask the person making it for extra whatever, they throw it in for free. Soda in a water cup. My local McDonald's has a rule where you have to pay $1 for a water cup, so I took a ketchup holder and filled it up. Aren't those really tiny? Yeah, the struggle is real. Shots, 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 shots! I work at an online diaper bag company, and if a bag was returned, I was supposed to find out if it was a defect or the customer's fault to decide how to issue a replacement. When a frantic, hormonal new mom would call me, getting ready to rant and put her foot down, I would always interrupt their story and just ask for their address and what type of bag they wanted and ship it for free. No way am I being paid enough to get in that argument. I don't care if they're carrying large bricks in the bag. Take a new one. To be clear, this was the same response whether people called in upset or not. All I wanted was to get off the phone call and finish work. If you cared enough to call, then you convinced me. I was not interested in arguing with any moms, regardless of the initial demeanor. Yeah, I have complete sympathy with people taking customer complaints, and to be honest, I'm never turned away by these people, so I'd say most of them have the same policy as you. This kind of service can actually pay off significantly in customer loyalty. Last winter, I ordered a few bottles of flavored coffee syrup from a large online retailer. I didn't think the bottles might be glass, and nobody on their end considered that shipping glass bottles of syrup in -20-degree weather may not work out well. Suffice it to say that what arrived in the box was more bulk snow cones with glass chips than bottles of syrup, which also ruined a couple of other items packaged in there. I got in touch with them, armed with pictures, and expected to have to show them the damage. Instead, within a couple of minutes, I effortlessly had an account credit applied. They offered to ship replacements, but I declined since they would have had the same fate. The result was that not only did I not hesitate to buy more coffee syrup from them, in appropriate weather, but it boosted my confidence in buying any product from them. And I buy a lot of stuff online nowadays. I worked at a hardware store in a garden center making close to minimum wage. We often loaded heavy bags of mulch and dirt for customers in their truck beds and whatnot. We were told that we were not allowed to take tips from customers. So being the good boy that I was, I turned down a couple of tips until one day I loaded up a full customer pickup bed and he handed me $20. I told him I can't take that, and he looked me dead in the eye and said, "Do they really pay you so much that you don't need it?" I stopped being an idiot that day. Why the frick I let someone pay me so little and tell me I'm not allowed to make more, and how I listened to that is just embarrassing now. Worked at Target. They had the same store policy. But my manager also said just take it anyway because they had someone complain about someone refusing to take a tip as being rude a week or two prior. Sometimes I'd just buy a box or two of fruit snacks for everyone and toss them in the break room with it. I used to be a cashier at Walmart. No crap, I had someone try to give me a $50 tip for knowing how to do my job properly. I desperately needed it, but I couldn't take it as there are cameras and I was scared crapless that I was going to get fired. He insisted, so I put it in the donation jar. That's so terrible at a low-wage job in which generally customer service can't get paid enough, they can't accept a tip from a customer for providing quality service. I work in retail and part of my job is helping customers load furniture purchases into their car. Unfortunately, most of our customers never really expected to be buying furniture when they came in, just by the nature of where I work, so they oftentimes come in vehicles that are grossly unfit for the job. I've had to help customers try to lift love seats and sofas into the back of their sedans, for example. Well, one day after I'd been there a few weeks, I got called into the furniture department for customer assistance. So I go out there with a flatbed cart and meet the lady who bought a large chest. We get it on the cart and I push it out into the parking lot. Then she points me to her tiny little car. I can immediately tell there's no way in heck it's going to fit, but she's convinced we can make it work. About 20 minutes later, she actually proves me wrong. As we're saying our goodbyes, she pulls a $5 bill out of her wallet and offers it to me. I tell her that I just started there recently, and so I actually wasn't sure if I'm allowed to accept tips. She said something along the lines of, "It'll just be our little secret." And after thinking for a moment, I said, frick it, helping her was way more trouble than the $3 I was paid in those 20 minutes. So I took her money, went back inside and casually asked my boss if I was allowed to accept tips. "No," he said. "Don't get yourself fired over an extra $1 or $2. I briefly considered handing him the money and apologizing for accepting it, despite not being sure I was allowed to. Instead, I told him, "Okay, I only ask because that furniture call I just helped with was gonna offer me a tip before she realized she didn't have any cash on her. Made me realize I didn't actually know, so I'm just asking for future reference." Oh no, wouldn't want to lose this minimum wage job taking money offered by thankful customers that in no way costs the business anything. Massive retail corporations really just are the worst, aren't they? Work your minimum wage employees to the bone and flat out block them from taking gifts from grateful customers. No way that I wouldn't take that money. I work at Target and we aren't allowed to do anything to physically stop people from stealing. If someone's trying to be sneaky, we're supposed to say, "I think you forgot that in your cart." But if he wanted to grab something and just walk away with it, only thing we can do is tell asset protection. Back when I worked for Home Depot, one of the guys in hardware watched someone stuff screws and nails and other small items into their pockets. My coworker walked up behind him and scared the frickin' crap out of him by yelling, "So, are you gonna pay for those or what?" He got in huge trouble but wasn't fired, and it was funny as frick watching someone flail about with nails flying out of their pants. Whenever I shop at a department store, I always try to find the most disgruntled-looking cashier. I've had cashier bags that weren't scanned. They didn't care, and I don't say anything. That happened to me at Michael's, a crafts store, a few days before Christmas. The store is absolute hell on earth, and my cashier was a weary, 16-ish-year-old guy who was just done. He had the 1,000-yard stare, poor kid. He was mumbling on about how his girlfriend is mad at him because something about her birthday and how all the customers are just so mean and scary. I don't think he was even talking to me. I think he was just having a stream of consciousness. Anyway, I notice he's just shoving things into a plastic bag, so I say, "I think you forgot to ring some of those things up." He looks at me in a daze and says, "You look like a nice lady and I just can't do this anymore, so here you go." Wow. Thanks, fam. Hope you had a happy holiday. Used to work at a movie theater. No one cares if you bring your own snacks, although it's super aggravating if you just leave your snack garbage at the theater instead of taking it out with you. We usually have an hour window where all the theaters are getting out. We tend to have about 10 minutes per theater to clean on a busy day. Leaving your garbage in your seats makes everything slower. It's not hard to carry it down to the can. I work in an electronics retail store. We have a standard price match guarantee, 14 days with a receipt. I had a woman come in and give me a huge attitude and explain that she brought this TV 2 days ago and paid $3,199 for it, and that one of our competitors had it for $2,999 and she demanded her money back, plus the 10% difference. I made her wait and pretended to check with the manager. Well, when I looked it up, we were currently selling it for $2,500. So I went over with a huge smile and told the mean woman who was giving me dirty looks the whole time, "Sure, Mom, we can match the $2,999 for you and the 10% of their $200 difference." So she walked out thinking she won the battle, paying $2,979 for her TV. When, if she was nice, I would have given it to her for our sale price of $2,499. Being a B-word cost her $480. As a valet, we would reuse tickets and just pocket the cash to park as our tip on slow days. The manager never counted how many cars we parked or how many tickets we used. I was taught this by my coworkers on my first day. It was the only way to make money. Also, I never asked for ID when selling M-rated games to people who looked under 17 at a major retailer. It's not a law, and my supervisor didn't care as he wanted as many sales as he could get. Used to wait tables. People couldn't bring their own drinks, booze, or just water. I honestly didn't care if I saw them bring their own, as ours was way overpriced. One day, this obviously broke couple came in to celebrate something, and they asked for tacos and a big bottle of beer, but were discouraged by the price of the bottle. So I told them they could buy a bottle from the store on the other side of the street. It was half the price, and if it was warm, I could exchange it for one of our cold ones. I think I was too nice to people, though. I've never encountered another waitress or waiter who would be as nice as I was. But meh, it felt good and the bosses could never tell. A coffee shop I worked at was so poorly managed that I practically gave free drinks to the 5 to 7 customers that we actually had on a regular basis. The manager and owner were always in China and the few customers were usually our friends. I even took on double shifts so I'd get paid more. We let the customers do whatever the heck they wanted, and it even got to a point where they played Smash Brothers in the back. They even hung out in the kitchen to cook food. As employees, we probably broke every universal employment law possible. It was the chillest minimum wage job I had, but unfortunately it came to an end when the entire staff except myself decided to go to EDC and my manager happened to show up that one day. About 22 years ago, I worked in a Kmart that had a diner and I was the dishwasher. One day, a waitress came up to me and asked me to clean a mess in the ladies' room. In my ignorance, I'd just assumed someone had spilled the trash or something that innocuous. I opened the door and everything looked fine. I opened the first 2 stalls and everything still looked fine. Then I opened the 3rd stall. Some lady had projectile crapped all over the back wall of the stall. It was a tremendous amount of liquefied crap. So, after dry heaving a number of times, I leave the ladies' room. I informed the head waitress that there was no way in heck I was going to touch that mess. She whined and moaned about it, but I wouldn't budge. She called the store manager down to the restaurant and he started yelling at me to clean up the mess in front of everyone else. I flat out refused and told him to go take a look for himself. I grabbed a dish bucket from the opposite end of the restaurant and on my way back I saw him come out of the restroom. On his way out, he stopped by the hostess and told her to put up an out of order sign. They ended up hiring a professional cleaning service to take care of it. Apparently he didn't get paid enough to deal with that crap either. Non-Americans. What's the craziest rumor you heard about America that turned out to be true? Surfer dudes actually speak like that. Californians actually speak like that too. This video feels like a nice little full circle on my first video with the channel, which was about things that surprised non-Americans about the US. Thanks for watching these last few months, folks. I'm from Quebec, and when we went down to Boston for a school trip, I sneezed in public and heard 2 or 3 people say, "Bless you." Quite a weird rumor I had heard not 2 months prior to that. I thought it was nice.
Wait, you don't say bless you when someone sneezes? I mean, it's not like it means anything, so I could understand why. It just seems so strange not to say anything.
I mean, how else were we supposed to deal with the demons that escape through sneezes? That people actually get attacked by alligators which got in their pools, specifically referring to Florida here. There are boa constrictors in Florida as well. So apparently yellow school buses are actually a thing in America. I honestly thought it was a cartoon thing, but nope. That Dolly Parton has her own theme park in Tennessee. I thought it was a joke. That woman is a saint. She has a book program for children where, once they're born, they'll receive a free children's book once a month until they turn 5. That's amazing!
She absolutely is. She's done amazing things for people, especially where she grew up. She deserves far more credit than she already has. My 2 sons are in that program, and she eats at the Mexican restaurant across the street from my house. I live in Nashville. She's super sweet and down to earth. I always thought that Olive Garden in The Simpsons was just code for generic restaurant. I mean, that's not entirely incorrect. Olive Garden is probably the closest you could get to beige if restaurants were colors. And when I first saw The Big Bang Theory, I thought for years that the Cheesecake Factory was a made-up restaurant. 'Tis such a silly name. If I don't like someone but am still socially obligated to get them a gift, I get them a gift card for Olive Garden or Applebee's. I studied in Maryland for about half a year back in 2017. I'd always heard that Americans are like super good at pie. I was pretty much all alone during Thanksgiving since everyone else was with their families. One of the RAs I'd befriended knocked on my door and bought me all different kinds of pie. Dear Lord, I've never tasted anything that delicious. From blueberry to apple to pumpkin. Every single pie. They were all amazing. I actually don't properly know if this is true, but you have like a whole aisle in your supermarkets dedicated to just the hundreds of cereals you have. Mostly true. It's cereal and other breakfast items like granola and oatmeal, but mostly cereal. All the food is bigger. Free refills.
I'm from Australia, and all my life I believed red Solo cups were like 555 area codes, a Hollywood prop. When I emigrated to the US, my mother-in-law was making dinner and offered me iced tea in a red Solo cup. I lost it, made everyone sign the cup, and I've still got it.
The Solo cup stories always kill me. We had some German exchange students in high school, and one of them loved how many American things were just like in the movies. We rode in the back of a truck to a pizza place for lunch that day, and he was loving it. In the afternoon, there was a party/get-together at someone's house. The kid was eyeing the stack of Solo cups and coyly asked, "Can I keep one?" We said sure, and the red Solo cup was the cherry on top of his American experience that day. Masked people come to your house, knock on your door asking for candy. Mostly it's just packs of kids, but sometimes it's whole families. This was my friend's Halloween culture shock. It's a ton of fun to hang out next to the walkway in a costume, pretending to be one of the decorations and scare people as they walk past you. Sports bars are actually exactly how they're portrayed on the TV. Yeah, just much less attractive people.
Drink sizes. Holy crap. When my family visited in 2017, we landed in Texas for a stopover. First thing I saw in the shops, part of the terminal, was a dude who was drinking from what actually looked like an actual frickin' bucket. Here in New Zealand, our large drinks would be considered an American small or maybe medium. We need bigger cups than most of the world since over half the cup is filled with ice. Not exactly crazy, but I wanted to test out the stereotype that Americans will talk to anyone. So I sought out a sports bar on my first visit. Ended up having a ton of really fun conversations with total strangers who I'll never talk to again. It was great.
American, I will speak to anyone about anything.
I can't even count the number of times I've randomly started conversations with strangers, become friends within 30 minutes, then never spoken to them again. When I started traveling for work, I'd often find myself in bars or on flights and buses alone, so I'd end up starting a conversation so I could have some human interaction. As a Canadian, it amazes me how much people around the world keep to themselves. I go to a big ski hill in the mountains a lot and look forward to chilling on ski lifts, chatting with some of the wise old skier dudes. I have long, heartfelt conversations with random's dads on airplanes, and it's great. Again, naturalized European narrator here, it seems like such a damn culture shock to have random people engage in conversation and have, or at least seem to have, genuine interest in the conversation. It's deeply unnatural, but quite pleasant for us. Biscuits and gravy is a legit thing. Also, you can ride motorcycles without helmets in some states, and your iced tea isn't sweetened unless you ask for sweet. Nothing could have possibly prepared me for the absolute dichotomy of sweet tea versus iced teas in the comments to this. This is evidently very important to many. A good sausage gravy with sage and black pepper, with some good flaky biscuits, is one of the best southern comfort foods, along with a cup of strong, sweet iced tea. Crazy hospitable. Turned out to be true. Talkative. Turned out to be true as well. $2 bills. American state and national parks are some of the most beautiful places on Earth. All parks could use more funding, but American parks are well-staffed and maintained. There's real pride there. I love our national and state park systems. One of my state parks recently got a herd of bison, which I haven't seen in the wild since my trip to Yellowstone. The week I graduate, I'm going to go see them and relax in nature. The minimal amount of paid days off you can get from work. A friend of mine from Wisconsin was very proud he got 20 days off per year. If someone in Germany would offer me only 20 days, I would laugh at him and leave. So student loans. How does it work in the USA? In the UK, when you go to a university, you take out a student loan, and after uni, when you earn a certain amount per year, a percentage above that threshold goes towards paying it back. However, if you don't earn that much, I don't know how much, maybe 20 to 25k per year, then you pay nothing. Then after a while, if you haven't paid it back, 30 years, maybe 40, then it just disappears and you don't have to pay it. In America, do you have to pay regardless of income? Is there a time limit after which debt expires and disappears? No. The only time the debt expires or disappears is if you die or pay it off. Most people have co-signers, which tend to be parents or family members, so even if they die, the co-signer will be forced to pay the student loan debt, on top of dealing with the loss of a loved one. Americans are nice and will stop to talk to strangers. Canadian here, living in Alberta. To anyone who's never been, you'll be blown away by the general Americans' generosity of their time, knowledge, and helpfulness. I've done a few summers of road trips from Calgary. One time I went to as far east as Ohio, Tennessee, as far south as New Orleans and Dallas, went through the flatlands, and rode up the Rockies the rest of the way home. I have visited almost all the landlocked states, 5 more to go, and 4 along the Gulf states, all by car. I've been through a lot of big American cities and a lot of tiny towns. All of you, north to south, make Canadians look like bloody savages. I expected something worse, probably because of television and internet. I ended up leaving your country after the first time I visited, blown away and with a newfound very real love for my southern neighbors. Been 5 times on multi-week trips. We'll spend time and money there again. 10 out of 10. America has libraries that are essentially free to use. This was not even a rumor, but more like a sarcastic comment from a friend who heard I was excited to go to the US, because he knew what book nerds my entire family are. When I first arrived here 25 years ago, the first day of work at Newark, New Jersey, I walked out at lunchtime and saw the huge central library. The size boggled my mind, but I bravely walked in to check it out. The guy says, "Yep, show me your work ID, or local address, and you get a membership card." Me? How much does it cost? I only own $80 until I get my first pay. Him, bemused, almost laughing, "It's free, you don't pay for anything." It took me some time to recover from the shock of this. So, how many books am I allowed to take home? I was expecting that to be a catch. Maybe I need to put down a security deposit for each book. He was now positively enjoying himself. How many can you carry? That day I took home 30+ books, just being greedy, and quickly called my dad to tell him about it. For a guy who painstakingly would browse used bookstores in small-town India just to get his kids great books to read, he was suitably amazed. He was puzzled if it would kill the bookstore business, because who'd buy if such great free libraries existed? Up to the present day, I feel such gratitude for being able to come here, and when Dad visited some years later, I would drop him off at a library on my way to work, and he'd be lost in it all day. To address some of the questions people are now sending me, yes, by take home I meant borrowed to return. Carrying those books home has a story too. The librarian saw my dilemma and wanted to stick to his original "how many can you carry" comment, and would not allow me to discard any, so went off and got me 2 large bags made of cloth or canvas, like grocery bags. And when I lugged all of that on the train back to New Jersey that evening, I had to walk home from the train station, no car, to a mile away. Normally not bad, but with those books, it was tedious. A cop saw me and gave me a lift home. He loved my story about the library too. India today is slightly better, but as a kid in a small town, the only library I saw was at my school, where books were never allowed to be taken home. And then there was this single shop where you subscribed to borrow some pulp fiction. The Asiatic library in Bombay was big. I saw it when I visited my cousins, but it had a wait list, I think, of 4 years, because they couldn't handle too many members. I'm always amazed at what all libraries offer. I took my parents for a movie showing once, set up as a once-a-month thing for seniors, and they were shocked that it was free. And they were giving away cookies and stuff too, along with pleasant company. My girls have learned to love the library as much as I do, and probably have read more books than most kids at school. My daughter won an award for some accelerated reading, and at age 9 gave a speech about the impact of libraries for her, and how much her dad and grandpa loved them. Thank you, libraries and librarians. This started off as a simple praise of America's libraries, but turned into a really cute, fresh-off-the-boat story that would probably make a number of people want to move to the land of the free. Maybe do your research first though, folks.
As an American, I think you could ask the title question to Americans, cause there are some weird friggin' states, man. Dry counties, cities where places aren't allowed to be open on a Sunday, or there can only be certain hours on Sunday. Not being able to pump your own gas. Whoa, there are places where you can't pump your own gas? I feel like I'm an idiot for not knowing this.
Oregon here, can confirm. Afraid to drive outside the state because I don't know how to pump my own gas. That you can identify Texans with the simple phrase, "The stars at night are big and bright," and someone else will go, "Deep in the heart of Texas." That Hawaiians really like Spam. Yeah, and there's a perfectly good reason for it too. After Pearl Harbor, the effects of World War II started in the US and rationing became a thing. Well, it turns out that it's kind of hard to get fresh rations to an island that imports a lot. So for meat, they had to make do with Spam. Human ingenuity prevails and dishes were made, and that's how Hawaii learned to love Spam. The honking. I thought it was a movie stereotype. Then I went to New York.
It's rare outside the big cities though, in my opinion.
If you think that's bad, try going to India. Parents were from the USSR. They were freaking shocked about how nice you Americans are. They said that y'all were a weird type of nice, but nice regardless. It didn't even matter that they were from the USSR, moved to the States post-collapse. You Americans seemed to accept them anyway. I, American, had such a pleasant interaction with a tourist from Russia the other day, in Walmart of all places. I saw a man that clearly looked confused in the auto section, so I walked toward him and he tried to explain what he was looking for, but he hardly spoke any English at all. So I pulled my phone out to use Google Translator and told him to speak into my phone. The translation came back that he was looking for detergent for bugs in love bed, so I took him to an aisle to look for bed bug killer. He looked so confused and pulled out a piece of paper that had "Love Bug Wash" written on it in English. So I took him back to the auto section and helped him pick out some car soap. He kept saying, "God bless," to me. We laughed a lot through the process, and I thought it was so cool that we could speak different languages but still communicate. To clarify, love bug is a type of fly. We call them love bugs because after mating, adult pairs remain coupled, even in flight, for up to several days, like they're in love. But we get them in huge numbers during mating season, spring or summer. Because of this, a lot of cars will be covered in these love bugs that they ran into the road. This is Florida, by the way. Sorry, I let this one get quite far off track, because I was so interested in the gosh darn love bugs. Also, why do all the weirdest things seem to converge on Florida? They have milk in gallon cartons. When I visited America, I went to a supermarket for some breakfast stuff, cereal and milk. All they had was milk in gallons. Who could possibly have that much milk? I asked for a smaller carton, and the lady who worked there just laughed at me and asked me if we just don't like milk in England very much.
Many supermarkets have half gallons and quarter gallons, but honestly, I'm surprised that it's an issue. I live alone and go through a gallon of milk in just a few days.
I drink at least 7 gallons a day to ensure I get enough calcium. That American kids eat straight sugar. Walked onto the playground and saw kids chugging these long, thin sticks. I'd try and it was just colored sugar. They called them pixie sticks.
Oh boy, wait till you find out about Fun Dips. You have a hard candy stick, so all sugar, that you lick and then dip into a colored sugar sack to make it stick to the sugar stick. Then you lick the sugar powder off the sugar stick. After you finish all the powder, you eat the stick.
Before I came to the States, as we called it, I lived in Germany.
The area I lived in had no fireflies, so when I got to the States, I did not believe my eyes, as I finally saw fireflies light up the world as I fell asleep. I also thought that New York City was a popular fictional city. I didn't believe it actually existed. At the time, it seemed too large and extraordinary to possibly exist. For those talking about other countries, I didn't know there were other countries at the time either. I only knew of places I had lived, which was Germany and soon to be the US. I was never told about the concept of countries until I went to an American school. The "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" song that's apparently sung at baseball games. Still not entirely sure that guy wasn't taking the mickey out of me. Female here. I've been in bathrooms where the gap between the stall and the door is so big I felt the need to cover it with my purse just to get some privacy. The absolute worst is when some mother brings her grubby-handed son into the bathroom and you see a freaking 8-year-old's eye staring at you from the other side of the door. That your country is huge. I got off the plane and asked the cab guy how far the hotel was, and he said about 30 miles. I almost had a heart attack. Turns out cabs are cheaper than the UK though. I can't remember the price I paid, but I was pleasantly surprised. The UK cabs are like £4 per mile. Also, you would get laughed out of the taxi for asking to go 30 miles and not taking the train. Not really crazy, but I just learned you guys have like outdoor sirens that get tested somewhat frequently. I've only heard those noises in video games and movies until my friend sent me a clip, because I had no idea it actually happened. In many areas of the US, these sirens are used to warn of impending severe weather and potential tornadoes. Sirens are tested on the first Tuesday of the month at 10 a.m. around Chicago. My dad heard this crazy rumor about everyone getting drunk and wearing green for one day a year. He obviously didn't know this was a holiday and was like, WTF. When he came to the US and he discovered St. Patrick's Day, he was amazed. My dad is from China, for you affronted Irish people. St. Patrick's Day in the US is an excuse for ordinary Americans to act the way that middle-aged Londoners act when on holiday in Dublin, only with more plastic leprechaun hats and glitter. Yeah, and on top of that, suddenly everyone's part Irish. When I say suddenly part Irish, I'm not implying everyone's lying. A lot of them are probably telling the truth since there's so many Irish Americans. What I meant is that no one mentions this fact until St. Patrick's Day. People of Walmart. One of the nicest people in one of the towns I lived in is pictured on People of Walmart. He's known as Willie the Pimp, or just Mr. Willie. Older gentleman, just likes to dress flashy because it makes people smile to see beautiful things. Before he got too old to drive, you could spot his car by the flower arrangements he attached to the side of the front bumper. As a Brit living in America, the amount of pharmaceutical commercials on TV is creepy. Smiling person living life to the fullest. Narrator? Side effects include anal bleeding, gigantism, lupus, skin shedding, and death. Ask your doctor about Prolax today. The SAT exam being multiple choice. Multiple choice exams in general. That you can get into university just by being good at sports. Like what the frick? Yep, most schools have academic and athletic scholarships, not just academic ones. It's not always a full ride, and you still have to qualify academically, which is occasionally a problem, but that's usually a bare minimum baseline. The reason is that college sports are almost as popular as professional sports, especially football and basketball. Those sports bring money and fame to players and schools, so it's common for schools to try and get the best players to commit. The school I went to, UVA, won the most recent college basketball championship, and now they're well known around the US. Nearly every man is circumcised regardless of religion. Checking in, Catholic. Am snipped. I had an interaction with a British friend online where I said that something looked like a flaccid pee-pee, and he was really confused. When I traced over what I was saying, we realized that I was picturing a flaccid, circumcised pee-pee, and he, being more familiar with the uncut variety, hadn't seen what I did. It was the first time I realized that other parts of the world wouldn't be inclined to circumcise every male child. Now I'm just not sure why it's so pervasive in the US to begin with. They have garbage disposals in their kitchens. That's so wild to me. To clarify, I'm from the UK. I'm aware that they're not the same as bins or trash cans and that they're mainly for food waste and scraps. I'm also delighted that they're called garberators in Canada. Homeowners associations. What the frick is up with that? The place that my wife and I bought came with a busybody of an HOA president. We got a fricking note stapled to our gate that said our clothes line had to be removed because it was an eyesore. So I wrote back and told her about how crappy our dryer is, and that we're in the fricking desert anyway, so hanging them up is the most environmentally friendly way to dry clothes anyway. Still got another note during laundry day the following week, so I stapled a note to her door that said, "If you want me to have a good dryer, then buy me one. Otherwise,
kindly F off. Haven't heard from her since, not even a note. Hope she's okay. When you sail west, you arrive in America and not India. Then why do they call them Indians? Phew, this guy. Can you really just buy a Glock at Walmart? At my local Walmart, you can bring your car in for an oil check, get an eye exam, get a haircut, eat lunch at the in-store Subway, purchase a Glock, purchase groceries, purchase a frickin' couch, then go home once the background check for the Glock is finished and the oil change is done. Other things I forgot to add, you can purchase alcohol depending on state. You can get your taxes done there, you can get your birthday cake made, print pictures from a USB, phone, etc., get dog tags made, get spare keys made, rent movies, pick up a full-course meal for dinner at the deli. What's the most ridiculous rule in your place of work? I'm a teacher, so I have a million stupid rules I have to follow. But the worst one is that my performance evaluation is based on student improvement on the STAR literacy test. I teach woodshop. At my old job, HR held a meeting to tell us that there was too much swearing on the sales floor. Someone raised their hand and pointed out that swearing is very common in our industry, and that it is the way that our customers speak. HR later sent out a memo explaining that swearing should be limited to conversations with clients. It was amazing. Please only swear when in the presence of a customer. All customers should be greeted with a jolly, "What the frick is up?" or a chipper, "Who the frick crapped on you today, you B-word?" Any attempts to not insult or demean our customers will be written up. Frick you and have a great day. HR. Somewhere I have the email printed out. I had a crazy crap folder where I kept nutty emails, and that HR memo was definitely one of the best. If you are stuck in traffic on the way to work, you must email the CEO. Phone calls and texts are not permitted, only email. I'd get that one in writing and send it to the corporate insurer. If you're supposed to email the CEO when you're late, there's probably no corporate insurer, there's probably not much of a corporation for that matter. I used to work at a place in which my boss implemented a no more than 2 glasses of water a day policy. What a chump. I ignored this rule and complained directly to our CEO, and the matter ended later that day. What was weird though was that the majority of people actually followed the rule, and some even shopped me up to HR about breaking the rules. I left not long after that because not only was my boss a member, but if my colleagues were going to HR over me drinking water, then I obviously couldn't trust them. What industry was this where they felt the need to limit water drinking? Sadly, they were probably trying to limit bathroom breaks. As a man who is guzzling water from dawn to dusk, admittedly, probably just because voice acting is a little tough on the throat, I would revolt if a boss tried to implement this. Had a workplace time our bathroom breaks and deduct them from our allotted 15-minute breaks for lunch. We had to go see the office manager to get a key to open the restroom. As soon as we left his office, he would start a timer. When you got back, he would stop the timer and tell you how much time you needed to deduct from your lunch or next break. They watched our breaks like a hawk. Also, if you made a mistake, they would stand over you and time you while you fixed it and deduct that from your lunch or breaks. You couldn't bring anything that smells for lunch, and they had no way of heating anything up. I worked out my contract and split. I would troll the heck out of that manager. Just pee in the sink. Then go ask for the bathroom key, be gone for 21 seconds, and give the key back. Do this often. Confuse the frick out of him while simultaneously interrupting his day 30 times. Worth it. Business casual dress code even when I work at home. They Skype me to check. What the frick? Why? What business are you in? Exactly my thoughts on it. I'm an intern for a small logistics company. My dad told me this one a while back. He used to work for a PR firm. The way he described the office environment, think The Office, but in the 1980s. The company hired a corporate efficiency specialist to come in and improve things. She came in and implemented all kinds of rules which seemed to follow some sort of caste system. Her philosophy was, the higher your rank, the more perks you get. Her idea of perks? Number of pictures you're allowed in your cubicle. Whether you're allowed to have a potted plant or not. Coffee mugs were only allowed to senior employees. Others had to use paper cups. Being allowed to leave the office for lunch was also considered a perk. Needless to say, a coup soon followed and she was tossed out on her hiney. Dress code policy is just dumb at my work. Different positions have different requirements, even though we all work in the same office. My favorite rule, though, is the one on shorts. We can wear shorts on Fridays between Memorial Day and Labor Day. However, the shorts can't have pockets on the side. It was written to discourage ratty cargo shorts, but the way in which it was written allows me to wear gym shorts. So I do. Once worked at a place where some mini-boss decided that since UPS trucks don't turn left, we shouldn't either. I don't know if UPS trucks turn left or not, or if that is beneficial to them or not, and frankly, I don't care. The point is that mini-boss thought they did, and that was the reasoning he gave. He was an idiot, I didn't stay there long. This was a goddamn ambulance company with a 911 contract. I will turn left if and when I fricking need to turn left. Not my current job, but I used to work for some crazy people. You had to stand in a specific area while eating so they could see you on the camera. Don't talk to customers longer than 3 minutes unless you're making a big sale. Even then, keep it short. Answer the phone within 2 rings. Keep the conversation to less than 30 seconds. You can't talk to your coworkers outside of work. You can't talk to your coworkers while at work, even if there was not a single customer in the store. I'm sure there's more, I just can't think of them right now. Old job of mine in a warehouse. Our stations were pretty far apart, so when we'd listen to music, we'd all usually have our own stuff playing. Not a problem since you could barely hear the neighbor's music. Well, the CEO didn't like hearing multiple songs when walking through the warehouse. He made a rule that we all either had to listen to the same music or none at all. I'd put on the same song, but everyone started at 15 seconds apart. We got a new vacation policy where you could take unlimited time off. When he announced it, we looked at the big boss like he had a pee-pee growing out of his forehead. All the while, he assured us that if we wanted vacation, to take it. Really? A little bit awkward. He changed it to discretionary time off, meaning that if your boss approved, it was okay. Then changed it to 160 hours should be the max. And if you go over 200 hours, then you probably don't need to work here. I can't reconcile with how these people implement these policies and come across as a good person in their own heads. It's one thing to be desperate in rough times, but the sneakiness is what gets me. I once needed a pen. Figured this was a reasonable ask. Went to the supply closet on my floor, which was locked. Asked the floor's admin, she told me to go to the main supply room in the basement. Went to the basement and explained my situation of needing a pen. They told me all requests for supplies must be approved by my department head. Problem is, being new, I'd never met my department head. She also worked in San Francisco. I work in Milwaukee. So I needed to send an email both introducing myself and asking her if I had permission to get a pen from the supply closet. This is my favorite one so far. It's so ridiculous in every way. In my first one-on-one with my boss, she asked me how everything was going. I said fine, but explained that I wasn't able to get a pen, which made taking notes and meetings difficult. She got up, went to her desk, and grabbed me a handful of pens. If you had to take leave on Monday or Friday so that you had an extended weekend of 3 days instead of 2, it was counted as 3 days leave, counting Saturday and Sunday. Deal with that. This was in a small private company in India dealing with medical writing. If you're 1 minute late, it's tardy. If you take a half day, nothing goes on your record. I was told to just take a half day if you're going to be late because they straight up fire you for tardies. Also, if you clock out early, it's a tardy. If you have to go to the doctor on lunch break and it's going to take an hour and 10 minutes, take the rest of the day off. Weird. Firemen. Our risk management department decided long ago that poles were too risky for us. So we used the stairs. We have poles. Anyway, now the newest rule is no free weights, as in no free weights to work out and stay fit. Go into burning high-rise, absolutely. Walk around the station carrying 40-pound dumbbells, too risky. I feel you. My fire department just got some workout equipment, rowing machine and bike, and it had been delayed due to liability concerns. But we actually have a fire pole that we use. It's all very confusing. We aren't allowed to wear jackets unless they're purchased from the resort gift shop with the hotel name logo on it. They're $50+ and we don't get reimbursed, but it's the price you pay to stay warm in the cold months. McDonald's did this to us when I worked there. They paid half, but they were still like $50 to $60 for a crappy fleece. I just wore my regular jacket and nobody said a thing. Former job. There was trouble when I, officially, moved desks and my new desk had a phone with a call display. Apparently call display phones were allowed for people at a certain pay level. Your pay level also governed the height of your cubicle walls. My manager's solution was to promote me. Another former job, we were mandated to work on an engineering-related project outside of work hours, because a responsible engineer always gives back to the engineering community. I could live with that. However, your project had to be related to the company's business. We have to do all of our paperwork at least 3 times. There is a copy of it in our personal folders, a copy online, and a copy in our store folders. Not only does it waste time and paper, but forgetting to do one has gotten people fired. They did the other 2 identical pieces of paperwork confirming that yes, they did take out the trash, and yes, they did check the store voicemail, but how dare they forget to do the 3rd piece of identical paperwork. Our weekly visits from corporate revolve around whether or not we've done all this paperwork. It's so redundant. My workplace doesn't let you use the word problems. Instead, we have to say challenges if something is wrong, as a problem is a negative word, and challenges promotes the fact that there is room to fix said problem.
But problems have solutions.
I'd love to have a boss tell me my drinking has become a challenge. Former job at a law office. One of the partners sent an email to the entire staff that employees were not allowed to gossip in the building. What was everyone gossiping about, you ask? Oh, said partner was divorcing his wife and sleeping with one of the associate attorneys in the firm. But don't gossip. All the extra toilet paper in the building has to stay in a single closet where it can be overseen by the toilet paper queen. I heard her shrieking the other day when she discovered someone had hoarded 1 spare roll of toilet paper upstairs, so the people who work upstairs wouldn't have to walk down multiple flights of stairs when the toilet paper ran out. It's the cheapest 1-ply toilet paper available on the giant rolls that only fit in the special dispensers. I can't imagine anyone wanting to steal it.
I hope Toilet Paper Queen is actually her title.
She allegedly does other stuff, I'm not sure what exactly. Hear that, kids? If you work real hard and keep your nose clean, you too can maybe one day be your office's toilet paper queen. Godspeed, listeners.
We had a rule like that, so we all pooled $1 and brought our own TP at Costco, double ply. At first, managers were happy that they saved money on TP. Employees were mad that the company should pay for our TP, but it was a very unifying experience. Eventually, managers tried to woo us back to their side when they realized people were sharing pay information and just generally creating a united front. We had a spoon and milk queen who governed all the spoons and milk for my office. She would go around desks and hound people for spoons. People bought their spoons in so they wouldn't have to deal with her. But she didn't understand that people could bring in stuff from home and was adamant that they must belong to the company, and got angry if you opposed her spoon reclamation mission. She also redesigned our kitchen. In her grand redesign, she left out a cutlery drawer. But we still have triple height pots and pans drawer, so that's something. Although no cooker or pots and pans, so it's completely empty. Thankfully, she was let go. I used to work for the now long-defunct books, movies, and music store MediaPlay. Just one of the 285 reasons that poorly run businesses ran into the ground was the tardy or attendance policies. If you were literally 0.01 seconds late clocking in, even hours before the store opened, it was a really, really big deal. You'd not only be formally written up, but lectured like a child, oftentimes berated even. If you were tardy 3 times, bye-bye. However, if you no-showed and then called 2 hours later saying you were sick, okay, thank you, feel better. This trained everyone to just take sick days instead of being half a second late to work. I can't tell you how many times you'd see a co-worker screeching into the parking lot before work after fighting traffic from a wreck or whatever, noticing it was 8:01 and then slowly driving off to go home and feign being sick. This was particularly upsetting when it was pull-down stock week, when we needed every hand on deck but had unusually early shifts. My job years ago tried to implement a very strict attendance policy like that, where if you were 1 second late, you would get written up. Till one Saturday, a guy who worked there for like 30 years shows up to work 30 seconds late. They pull him into the office and write him up. He then gets up and tells them that he's going home. Working Saturdays was voluntary, and he basically said, "I don't have to be here today, so I'm going home." He was doing them a favor by working that day, but when they wrote him up for being 30 seconds late, he basically fricked them over by just going home. That policy didn't last too much longer. For the most part, if you're a few minutes late, it's no big deal at all. If you're late all the time, they'll have a word with you or write you up. But they understand crap happens sometimes that's out of your control to cause you to be late. Yeah, screwing over company veterans is historically a bad move in business. Glad that guy had the balls to leave and the rule was cancelled.
Many years ago, I was a vacuum cleaner salesman. There were songs about this particular brand of vacuum cleaner and how awesome it was. Every morning, we had to sing these songs as a group. In fairness, it was a pretty quality item. It was Kirby. Didn't mean to be subversive, I just didn't think anyone would care. When I was in the military, I saw a buddy of mine sitting outside crying. I went and consoled him best as I could. Apparently, he was just depressed and unhappy. After he was feeling a bit better, I went to go and find someone to tell them what was happening. They knew, in fact, he had been crying so much lately that they had instituted a no crying at your desk policy, which is why he was outside. If we want to take a full 5 days off week, we need to use 2 vacation days. 1 personal and 2 more vacation days. We can never use 3 vacation days straight.
Something similar here. We can't use our sick time until we use 3 vacation days. So let's say I have no vacation hours but get really sick. I can't use paid time off. Our sick time is essentially useless.
We work alternating days, 3 on, 4 off, 4 on, 3 off. If you take vacation on your short week, which is 3 working days, they dock you 5 vacation days for taking an entire week off.
How is that legal?
I drive valet. The company handbook says you're never allowed to back up. Ever. You absolutely cannot do the job without reverse. It's impossible. It's in there because of liability and our insurance policy. This way, it can always be the valet's fault if an accident ever occurs. Perhaps this will answer the most repeated question: if the rule says no reverse, yet you're expected to park a car, how can you park the car? Answer: never hit anything and always reverse despite the rules. Expect to be fired should you hit anything in reverse, but probably not. The rule only exists to cover the company's butt, but if they don't feel threatened by you working there and you're an asset, you will still not be fired. And yes, many people are questioning the legality of it, and you're right. It wouldn't hold up in courts, but it's in the handbook and it's silly, so I posted it. We can't ask others if they just want to come and grab a coffee in the break room.
Just develop a subtle nod that means the same thing.
How about a slap on the bum and a wink? The last commenter's suggestion for a signal is hilarious, but also feels like a great way to noticeably break a whole bunch of other, much more strictly enforced rules. Not accusing other staff members of being witches. Yeah, it happened, so we had to make a rule. I run a hostel in Uganda. It's not like this anymore, but for a while they attempted to have a dress code. Guys had to wear collared shirts, but Hawaiian-style shirts were totally acceptable. You could not wear jean shorts, but jean overall shorts were okay. I got sent home one day because my shorts weren't fingertip length. We were tech support. No one ever saw us, that was the best part. Because everyone is asking, fingertip length meant standing with your arms at your sides, and your shorts had to be longer than where your fingertips ended. Think grade school rules. I worked as a call receiver. We never saw a customer. We were only on the phones with them. Rule: your hair must be only a natural color. I dyed my hair the exact same color that someone from a different shift had. I was reprimanded. I told them that if the rule was not enforced for everyone, they couldn't single me out. Their reason for letting the other person have that color but not me: mine was my real hair dyed to an unnatural color. Hers was a weave that could be changed very easily. Really? Then why hasn't she been asked to change her hair? Because that crap is expensive. They gave up trying to convince me they were right.
I had a boss who didn't like the outrageous color I had in my hair. I'm a natural redhead.
One of my sisters actually got fired for a job for something similar. She's a natural blonde, but kept her hair dyed red for years. When she decided to go back to her natural hair color to cut expenses, professional dye jobs aren't cheap, her boss flipped out and insisted that she go back to red, pointing out that the company had a rule that prohibited dyed hair. He didn't believe her when she pointed out that this was her natural hair color, and fired her for insubordination and violating company policy when she flat out refused to go red again. Actually, she did offer to go red again if the company paid the styling bill. When she went in to pick up her last check a few days later, she took in a handful of pictures of her younger self to prove that blonde really was her natural color. Her boss just looked at them and said,
"That just means you've been violating company policy for years, and that I should have fired you a long time ago. Don't bother using us as a reference."
She was talking to a lawyer about a possible lawsuit, but I don't think anything ever came of it. I work in retail and we have on-call shifts. Your name will be listed on the schedule for a certain time as a call-in, so you have to call 1 hour before your shift to figure out if they need you to work for the day. For example, you'd be listed as on-call for 2 p.m. and wouldn't know until 1 p.m. if you were working that evening. If you don't call in, it's considered not showing up for a shift, but there's no extra pay for the shift whether they need you or not. So for 3 days of the week, I don't know if I have work or not. Can't make any solid plans to do anything except call my work and ask if they need me. I can't imagine having children or elderly that need taken care of because it would be such a hassle to arrange care for them just an hour before having to work. You people reading this want me to sue this corporate demon. I'm looking into it now and will update with any relevant developments. I'm going to dig up my contract tomorrow and see if I can speak to a law person. Thanks for motivating me. I don't know if it's a standard, but I worked at a place where HR wasn't allowed to tell us if someone was fired. It was a big enough place that you might not immediately realize someone had left, and when you'd found out, you weren't supposed to ask why. So if you wanted to know if they were fired, you'd ask, "Was there cake?" Which was to say that if the person had retired or left pleasantly after a number of years, they'd be given a party with cake. If they were fired, not so much. For example, "I haven't seen Brian for some time. Brian no longer works here. Was there cake?" We have a lock on the first aid kits, so if you need a band-aid for a cut, you have to get the key from the safety guy, which in turn makes it a reportable accident, with mountains of paperwork and investigations. We use an unbelievable amount of duct tape now. Frick that, I'd be keeping a box of band-aids in a rarely used drawer or hidden away somewhere. There was an issue where there was too much socializing going on the factory floor, particularly when people were working while sitting down. False, skewed supervisor perception. So they made everyone stand. When that presented ergonomics problems, they brought in these weird chairs that made you sit at a slant, had no backs and no wheels, so they wouldn't cause distractions. No part of it made any sense. I feel it. At my old job as a pet bather at a pet chain, we had a stool in the salon to sit at while using the computer, and I had a personal step stool for sitting while brushing large dogs on the floor. The cashiers next door complained that they weren't able to sit, yet we were, so all stools were ordered out of the salon. I thus had to kneel, squat, or sit on the floor to brush every dog over 75 pounds. You try convincing a Labrador that the short table that goes up into the air is safe for a dog his size. What red flags about a company have you encountered while interviewing for a job? Number of contractors to employees ratio. Also specific keywords such as unlimited potential income or this is not a scam. Unlimited potential income, this, especially when it comes with the really only limiting factor in how you earn is you. Cue cheesy crap-eating grin. I recently had to work on some scripts involving recruitment techniques for life insurance agency development heads. And after processing all of it and learning some of the crap they use to try and cajole you into buying insurance or recruit you, I've concluded that they're terrible. Primerica by chance? They dealt with life insurance and tried to recruit me by paying $500 to take a class and get my license. I could make $10,000 a month. No. Also World Financial. I've been dropping friends like flies thanks to those D-bags who trapped them. Any place that requires you to pay for something to come to work for them is a red flag. Extremely high turnover, or you're being interviewed by people who have worked in their department for less than 1 year. This. But the thing is, those places will hire anyone, and that's the upshot. You just have to tough it out for a year so you can get that oh-so-necessary criteria of minimum 1 year's experience that every other freaking employer wants for their entry-level positions. Yeah, related, I quit a very good job after 5 years because they brought in a new manager who was intolerable. My replacement lasted 3 days before quitting. Over the next year, that position turned over 4 more times, all because no one could stand this manager. Some of the new employees quit after a week or two. The company finally wised up and realized that the manager was the problem. These are all pretty good red flags so far, but I'll add a few I've encountered. It took me a long time into my career to trust my instincts on these red flags. 1. When you're going to be reporting to more than one person or department. 2. Super condescending attitudes on behalf of the interviewer. 3. I work in IT, and I had a manager ask me once what I would do if I knew that restarting the system was not going to fix the problem and might make it worse. But he would tell me to restart it anyway or find a new job. I told him, if it's going to make things worse, I'm not going to restart the system regardless of what you tell me to do. I ended up getting the job, but that question actually turned out to be a huge red flag. He tried to pull crap like that all the time. 4. If I can't stand someone's personality in a short interview, I'm not going to be able to stand working for them.
Awesome list. I recently experienced number 2 where the interviewer was telling me how budgets work at my current position at a place she only knows in passing. Not only was she very wrong, but I'm the budget person in my department, so I know exactly how wrong she is. This came up when she was annoyed that I didn't fill out my salary requirements on the job app for a position with 0 salary information posted. She said they needed that information from me because they have a limited budget, unlike where I currently work. Spoiler alert, my department's broke and my salary's paid on soft money. We're the exact opposite of rolling in the dough. She followed this up with, "And we don't want to break any hearts," which was almost about as obnoxious as refusing to give me any kind of hint about their budgeted range for the position. So it was all about me trying to be psychic and guess a number that she felt was appropriate, while also being a number that I felt was appropriate. In the end, they didn't offer me the job, and I'm glad, since the interviews, 2, both 15 minutes or more late on their end, I've heard that woman's name come up from someone who currently works at that place. Surprise, surprise, no one has anything good to say about her. Bullet dodged. Interviewer: how well do you handle conflict, such as if you work with someone who might yell a lot? Me: well, I don't think anyone should yell at someone while working. Interviewer: your direct report has a history of being passionate about his work. Oftentimes he raises his voice and it might make people uncomfortable. Red flag, run! My last boss specifically ended the interview, which he did himself, by saying that he was a gigantic butthole and that people hate to work for him, and would I be able to work under a boss like him? I eagerly agreed in a way that still sickens me to this day. And I paid for it because he was a man of his word. In fact, if anything, he was subtle and subdued in that interview. He was downplaying what a massive C-word he was. Frick you, Gene. Okay, I've had some unpleasant bosses in my past. Maybe I would have saved a lot of time if some of them had told me up front that they were just absolute buttholes. Last interview I went to, they told me they were going to be bigger than Facebook. The company had 6 Facebook likes and a web page smothered with errors, and got angry at me when I suggested some easy 1-minute steps to fix them. It was for a tech company. You could have just finished with, "We're going to be bigger than Facebook." Did they tell you that they couldn't meet your salary requirements but would make up for it with stock options? They always seem to have a terrible vesting schedule as well, to the point that you know the company won't be in business long enough to actually vest your options, which I'm sure is not an accident. So, how's the work-life balance here? Followed by laughter from them. This question triggered a big green flag from my current employer. They said that they were really flexible with scheduling, and I could make my own hours as long as they occurred between 5 a.m. and 7 p.m., and that I would receive a few weeks' notice if my hours were going to ramp up for any reason. Really one of the biggest reasons I'm still here. My current job is like that. I asked about the start time and they were like, most people start at 9 a.m., but as long as you get your time in, we don't really care when you're here. The vacation policy for salaried employees is something like, write the days that you'll be gone on a big calendar so we know when not to bug you. Granted, they expect about 55 hours a week, but coming from a job where I was written up for coming in 30 minutes early so I could leave 30 minutes early, never mind being on call 24/7, it's very much a perk. The biggest danger, screaming red warning flag was when I asked about work-life balance and specifically, what's the day-to-day look like? Apparently all the devs started at 11 or 12 and they were there until 8 to 9, indicating 0 families, home lives, girlfriends, or anything else important in their lives that isn't working that kind of schedule. I ended the interview as quick as I could after that. Sure beats 7 to 9. The guys interviewing me took me out to dinner, then went back to the office for a few more hours. One of them had a newborn at home. Right after I graduated, I interviewed for an entry-level data entry or admin position. They offered to hire me if I paid them $750 to complete their training course. Ugh. Oh boy, I've got a list. The interviewer had me stand against the wall while he rated me on my wardrobe. Father-son operation. The 2 interviewed me, argued a bit over stuff in front of me. Employee manual of one company, I don't know why they gave it to me at the interview, but they did. When the employee is no longer useful to the employee and company must part ways. Italian firm getting started in the US, the interviewer actually excused himself to go fondle the secretary. Googling the firm netted a few links to OSHA violations and deaths. Facebook page of one employee talking about his life on an oil derrick in the Gulf of Mexico. Travel percentage kept changing wildly in the interview. Panel interview, a few folks got up halfway through. Very vague questions about qualifications, mostly about me. Generic skills test and then a DISC assessment. This is a 110% job. You'll also be expected to work at least 2 weekends a month.
I'm encountering a series of red flags right now. So far, I've had 5 rounds, yes, 5, of interviews for a mid-level managerial job, all but one of which were rescheduled by the company at the last minute due to conflicts with the various interviewers. I finally reached the final round with a senior executive a couple of days ago, only to have that person show up in an annoyed huff and announce that they had only just now received my resume. They then went on to say, and I quote, "I don't even know why they're considering you for this role." They then followed up with this gem, "Which of our offices is this for again?" Needless to say, after all that rigmarole, I plan on turning down the offer if they send one. We work hard and play hard. Bullcrap. You just work hard and have awkward social get-togethers at most once a month. This isn't Wall Street. All that's going to happen is that you're going to make me work 60 hours a week because of this mentality. I work at a supermarket where we work long shifts, and then once a year we have a Christmas do so loud and out of hand that we've been banned from several pubs and clubs. Actually telling me about any obligatory playing corporate activities. Guys, I came here to work. I already have a family to spend my life with. I'm not going to substitute my life for you. You may be a part of my life, don't try to grab the whole life. I work for the Air Force. They love to have mandatory fun times. Everyone hates it. Want us to have fun? Give us the afternoon to spend with our families. I already spend more time with my coworkers than the people I love. Interview at a landscaping company. I commented on how nice all the plants were and what a relaxing environment the office must be. The interviewer laughed nervously and said, "It's not really." Then I met the boss and was talking about how I work well with my past managers, and he said, "And what if your manager is a difficult person who yells a lot?" He was referring to himself, and I knew it, but I was desperate and needed the job. Luckily, I left after 3 months. I had a boss describe himself as sometimes acting a little bipolar. Not to mention his wife worked for him, so they would have screaming matches from their offices and be really passive-aggressive. So glad not to be there anymore. Anyone who asks you how you handle someone who's bipolar or yell a lot is a huge freaking red flag. Oh god, is there really any worse combination than being trapped in a toxic workplace and in the middle of a toxic relationship? Glad you got out of that place. During an interview, my future boss mentioned that my predecessors flaked out after a day and 2 weeks, respectively. Turns out they didn't flake, he's just a massive butthole. I lasted 5 months. Went for a marketing executive role, turned up to the office, and it was almost totally bare except for 8 or 9 mismatched chairs. We were called into a side office for an interview. The central heating wasn't working, so the interviewer was wearing gloves and a winter jacket. When he mentioned it was commission-only pay, I walked straight out. Beware the Cobra Group. They are mainly just charity fundraisers who give their jobs outrageously misleading titles, like marketing executive. Also applicable if you live in Scotland is a group called Meraki Rose. Noticed a few of their adverts for similarly titled jobs in marketing and sales, saying you don't need experience or even a degree in a related field. They're basically telling you to do one of those jobs where you stand in the high street and try to sell insurance to passers-by. Again, commission only, and they make you do unpaid work at the start as training. Plus, specific info on them and in the job adverts is very hard to come by, and everything is vague, which is also a big red flag as far as I'm concerned. Being left waiting for half an hour for the interviewer, I picked up my bag and walked out. I once was left for 45 minutes with the receptionist, whom I talked to a bit, and this was in undergrad, and I'd never had a job before, so I was desperate. The interviewer, when I walked out, grabbed my resume from the receptionist, looked at it, and then said, "Okay, we'll call you if you get it." I didn't get it. I originally wondered if this was some kind of weird twist interview where they were just trying to assess how I would interact with the receptionist, but I honestly don't think they're that smart. So then, why the heck call me in for an interview if you've gathered from my resume that you don't want me? I just don't get it. You never know what kind of things companies will do as part of their interview process. It isn't uncommon for interviewers to talk to the receptionist to see how you've behaved. Be nice to the receptionist. If the receptionist says you acted like a prick, you'll almost never get hired. I can't remember who it was, perhaps Henry Ford or George Westinghouse, but I recall reading about how this famous business leader used to interview potential executives. As part of the interview, they'd go to lunch. If the candidate salted his food without tasting it first, he wouldn't be hired. The reasoning is that since he didn't taste the food first, he didn't know if it needed extra salt. He was dismissed as unthinking. The moral of the story is, once again, that some employers use unusual tests on job applicants. Be on your best behavior. I once caused a red flag for a person being interviewed. I worked at an IT help desk for a retail chain, and the people who called in could get pretty abusive on the phone. A new guy was being interviewed for the help desk team in a cubicle next to me, and I was on with a particularly nasty caller. So I turned up the volume loud enough so he could hear her cussing me out the whole time. I didn't overhear the whole interview, but I knew he declined their offer. Of course, from his end, this was a huge red flag. He's watching me do the job he'll soon be doing and getting cussed and treated horribly the whole time. It was my way of saying, get out while you can. I saw one of those ads that said work for students, $15 an hour or something. I called the number and set up an interview. Should have known not to interview for a job you don't have to apply for. I got there and it was this crappy building downtown with flickering fluorescent lights. They brought me to a room not unlike a doctor's waiting room where several other people sat filling out papers. I was skeptical but needed a job, so I started filling out my paperwork. When I flipped the page over, I finally saw the name of the company I was applying to, Vector Marketing. I only knew about them because a friend of mine sold Cutco knives for a while. I crumpled up the paper and left without a word. I went in for an interview with Vector once and it was absolutely hilarious. First off, the bullcrap started before I even walked in the door. I told them on the phone that I wasn't interested in a sales position, but would be down to interview for an office job. When I got there, they said that there weren't any office jobs, but I could interview for sales. They just lied to get me in the door. At this point, I wasn't going to take a job even if I got it, I just wanted to stay and watch the crap show. Now, as I walk in, and even more so as I went through the process, I realize exactly what kind of company this place is. As you walk in the door, you see a very nice reception area, and then look behind it and it's this big bare room with a bunch of chairs and a projector screen. As they sign me in and everything, I realize why this place looks only half built. They only built or decorated exactly as much as they needed. See, the entire building is designed with the flow of their con in mind. You walk in and are stopped at reception, which looks nice and legit. An attractive girl hands you an application and directs you down the hall to the waiting area. Once your turn comes, you're led into the interview office, which had part or all of one wall missing, not gone, just never built. After the interview, if you chose to continue and they chose to let you, you're escorted to what I only assume was the indoctrination zone. I left after the interview, so I don't know exactly. This was a large, entirely unfinished portion of the building. No decorations or anything, just a projector and chairs. This was the most insulting part, as it made it clear that their intentions were for everything to seem professional and on the up and up until we accepted a position, at which point they no longer cared about our opinion of their facilities. But yeah, they literally just built just enough walls to facilitate their scheme, no more, no less. They literally don't even bother trying to hide how little effort they put into it. You can even see that final warehousey room from the reception area, as they couldn't even put up enough walls to hide it. Another amusing thing was the interview. They were clearly using psychological tactics to bully kids into agreeing to work for them. For instance, the interviewer was extremely tall, and the desk and chair were huge, while the chair they gave me was short and uncomfortable. If I'd been the same height as the interviewer, I would still have been at least a foot below him sitting like that. In my memory, it's almost like King Yemma's desk from Dragon Ball Z. It was clear that they set it up so that the interviewer would be extremely imposing, and became even more clear when I started asking questions and the interviewer was originally very annoyed and pushy. They definitely set it up so that the interviewer could bully poor kids into joining, as that was definitely what they were trying with me. Not surprisingly, the interviewer became a nervous wreck once he realized I wasn't going to fold anytime soon. Well, initially you'll be a contractor, but there's opportunities for full-time employment in the future. My job involves managing an unemployment database. The amount this happens, especially for students, is astounding. Unpaid internship, 25 hours a week on a 6-month contract. Possibility of employment in the future. It's utterly disgusting how companies attempt to, and do, get away with working students the equivalent of a part-time job or more for free, and lie to them that they might actually hire them in the future. Students need to stand up against unpaid internships and refuse to take them, nationwide. Yep, I'm sad to say that I've fallen for a few of those ads and applied for a few of those kinds of jobs when I was a student. Oh well, you live and learn. Question: what kind of workload can I expect on the average week? I've heard horror stories of 80-hour weeks at big companies. Answer: let's not beat around the bush. All companies expect a 50 to 60-hour week. They don't say they do, but they do. Get right out of there. I'm very happy at my current job that doesn't even require me to answer emails outside of the 40 hours I work. I would gladly work 50 hours a week as long as I was A, paid time and a half for it, and B, given a schedule that actually gets followed. I think in any interview you want to ask questions about the company when it comes time for you to ask questions. 1. You want to specifically ask about the culture. Maybe ask the interviewer what they think about the culture. 2. Ask what kind of turnaround the company has. Low turnover probably means a good environment. 3. Ask the interviewer what they like most about working at the company. Pay attention to their body language and their answer. They're probably not going to be honest if they hate it, but you might be able to tell. If they tell you they don't like it, that's a huge red flag. When I was first looking into an office IT position, I was in an interview when someone knocked on the office door, asked a question, and left. After he left, the interviewer told me, "That's the person we're going to fire when you get this job." Gave me a bad vibe, so I turned down the offer when I got it. Joke of an offer too, $21K a year. I was making $40K a year working in retail. Things I've encountered. Bad-mouthing other applicants. Not by name, but still not cool. Didn't even look at your resume before they offered you an interview. Then mentioning they didn't even look at your resume before offering you an interview. Offered you an interview, again, before they even looked at your resume for a position you don't have experience or skills in. The good old gem, the pay sucks and the hours are long, but the work is great. Bad-mouthing other facilities or businesses in the same field. Group interviews where you're expected to give your answer in front of 8 or 9 other candidates. I've probably encountered other red flags, but these were the ones which stuck out the most for me. A thing called knowledge fishing. I interviewed for a building company in the UK for a marketing executive. They wanted to branch into residential builds from a large commercial network, but the marketing manager said they had no idea how to go about it at that stage. Well, I went through the interview process and did my best, then I got a message from them about a week later that I was through to the next stage. However, they wanted me to give them a full presentation of what I think their whole marketing strategy should be for every area, including social media and online marketing, and they wanted a full hour on each part. They ended the letter by saying, "Don't worry, we have a marketing plan, we just want to see if your thoughts are similar to ours." Ding ding ding, bigger red flag than at the end of the first act of Les Miserables. It's worth reiterating that this was a marketing executive, not a marketing director or anything huge like that. I told them I wasn't interested and left it at that. It was pretty obvious they wanted my input to make their marketing proposal, rather than to offer an actual job, especially as their letter stated something completely different to what the manager had told me. I know that this was a knowledge fishing job too, as I was talking to another agency about this and they told me that they've barred this company from working with them for doing exactly this before. In conclusion, company wanted me to do a huge presentation to them. Turned out they were fishing for ideas to implement without having an actual job to offer. Pre-interview, but if a company's website is tailored towards recruiting new employees way more than it is towards clients, it's a bad sign. A real reputable company that is making money wants their website to be client-facing first, and have a tab or link somewhere for careers for those who are interested. If 50% or more of the main landing page is catered towards selling you on why they're such a good career choice, it's either A, a scam, or B, a meat grinder business where the turnover is extremely high, or C, a company that has no idea what it's doing. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, linked at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot, linked in the description too. Either way, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.